Qualified buyers can save thousands with financing as low as 0.9% on select 2020 Hondas. Every Honda model is clearance priced. Accords, Civics, HRVs, CRVs, Passports, Pilots, and more. Don't miss the Happy Honda Day sales event with thousands of new Hondas in stock with financing as low as 0.9%. Search your local Honda dealer today. See dealer for financing details. Offer ends 1/4/21.
With Paul Taubman there, the PJT Partners Chairman, CEO and founder from New York and London this morning. Good morning, alongside Tom Keene and Lisa Abramowitz. I'm Jonathan Ferro, live on Bloomberg TV and radio. Coming up in about 15 minutes' time on Bloomberg Television, we'll catch up with Emily Rowland, the Chief Investment Strategist over at John Hancock Investment, on the disparity in the economy, Tom. Late cycle for housing, early cycle for the labour market. What does it mean for financial markets next year and beyond?
It'll be interesting. One of the themes we've looked at through the day as well, and of course on this historic day, a vaccine has been administered again to a 90-year-old grandmother in Coventry, England. Truly a mark for 2020. Right now, to look forward, Barry Ritholtz joins us. He has a podcast, Masters in Business. It is hugely successful. He manages real money. It's called Ritholtz Wealth Management. And Barry, that's where I want to start right now, looking into next year. Bloomberg has a spectacular article out today looking at ever lower fees for the asset management business. And the news is even the low fee people like Vanguard as well have lower fees. How low can the fees go?
Well, in some areas they're free, but with the caveat that there is no free lunch and free comes with a cost. As we've seen with Robinhood traders and others, there really is no such thing as free. You're either paying a float or perhaps not getting the greatest execution, or just removing the friction of a commission forces or allows a whole lot more trading. And that tends not to be a great outcome. But you're going to continue to see fee pressure on an ongoing basis and fees compress. Keep in mind, when we look at the Vanguards and the BlackRocks of the world, they're the fee leaders because their economies of scale are so immense, they could do things that other people just simply cannot compete with due to their sheer size. And so there are a lot of interesting niches developed. I don't want to say we're at peak passive index, but there's a lot of exploration of alternative types of investing where there isn't the same fee pressure. It's not a coincidence private equity is as popular, has become as popular as it is, because the fee pressure has not quite reached that space yet.
Well, that's alternative investments, to use the marketing phrase. They've got maybe fees that are more opaque where you really can't see what's going on as well. What's your trend for 2021? You've got an industry going to scale where everybody's merging with everybody else. What's your vision for where we are a year from now, talking about 2022?
Well, the lazy and easy forecast is more of the same. At a certain point, the fee compression is going to become more and more difficult to exact a few more basis points. It's like pressure in any sort of fixed container. At a certain point, you can only compress it so far, and we'll eventually hit that point. The interesting thing is, to the average investor, back when mutual funds were charging 2% with a 4% surrender fee, that made a huge difference compounded over 20 or 30 years. But let's be honest, what's the difference between 7 basis points and 9 basis points over the long haul? That turns out to be pretty much a rounding error. So high fees are not the drag on long-term investor returns that they once were. You should still be cognizant of it. You should still be aware of it.
Yeah.
The behavior you engage in is a much bigger cost than 6 basis points versus 4 basis points.
There's also a question of what value individuals add as managers when it's so hard to get things right. And I'm looking right now, everyone's kind of jumping on the same bandwagon. If you look at the consensus in markets, it's the strongest since late 2017, according to JP Morgan strategists. Does groupthink worry you?
Well, the fascinating thing about markets is that for most of the cycle, it's all groupthink, and it works. the wisdom of crowds is that most of the time the crowd is right. Just look at this recovery off of the March-April lows when everyone was convinced we were going to hell in a handbasket. That said, at extremes and at turning points, that's where the crowd is wrong. That's where groupthink doesn't really kick in and works against you. But for, 80, 90% of a secular market move, the groupthink, the crowd, at least over the directionally, tends to be correct.
Thanks so much. Greatly appreciate it. Barry Ritholtz with us today. Too short a visit. We'll do much more on this, particularly looking into 2021. We really want to encompass a data check here. Lisa and I are going to dive into this right now because what's fascinating here, Lisa, it's a relatively quiet day. At some point that ends. It always does. It can cut up. It can cut down. I would note, Lisa, that gold, which we haven't even touched on today, is back to $18.76 the ounce. Very quietly, gold's elevated over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's interesting that gold has actually become more correlated with risk assets somehow because it's become a diversifier in a sort of liquid asset. I want to go back to our fight, Tom, from earlier. I want to bring it up because John Farrow isn't here to stick a cereal box in between us and talk about the market response to the vaccine news. We got very positive sense that the United States is going to be giving some sort of emergency approval, emergency use authorization to the vaccine later this week. You haven't gotten that big of a move in markets. And if you look at 30-year Treasury yields, they actually are down on the day substantially, which would go against this. That's usually bearish. Priced in? What do you make of this? You think that the markets are taking this and being positive with it?
No, I think it's uncertainty. I think it's a new bout of uncertainty. And as Gina Martin Adams said, it seems forever ago, 2 hours ago, running all of our equity coverage, she said, look, the great miss this year was how well earnings and margins did. And she aggressively drove that forward into 2021. And, it's one of those moments where people are just looking for guidance. I would point out always after the jobs report, you run into this. The week after the jobs report is usually sort of a mystery like this. So in that sense, it's not unusual. And so I would still say, Lisa, the key immediate attribute is a stimulus and any news on the stimulus.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that people are looking for that extra bridge. And frankly, especially, it's not just stimulus. It's how they put it out there, right? In other words,
Right.
if they give checks to lower income individuals, that will get into the market and could potentially spur some sort of inflation.
I mean, I look at renminbi here floating down to 6.52 level today. I mean, again, you got to watch Pacific Rim. Those currencies are still elevated. ADXY, that index is still buttressed up against new dollar strength. And we heard Dan Katzeff of BNP talking today about his continued call of a weaker dollar. We continue across Bloomberg Television, across Bloomberg Radio. Futures in negative 15. The VIX showing that stability. We had 22 for a cup of coffee or a sip of coffee. I should say 21.84 on the VIX. Again, please stay with us on radio and television through this day. This is Bloomberg.
The following is a
This holiday season, shoot for the stars with sparkling gifts from Pandora Jewelry. When you shop December 7th through 14th, a sterling silver Moon and Stars open bangle is yours free with any purchase of $125 or more. Shop Pandora Jewelry today. Free bangle with purchase while supplies last at participating retailers. No substitutions. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Visit the Pandora store at Southland Mall, located off Florida's Turnpike on Southwest 205th Street and US 1. Pandora, Southland Mall.
The Happy Honda Day sales event is here, and thousands of new Hondas are marked with clearance prices and payments. Well-qualified buyers can save thousands with financing as low as 0.9% on select 2020 Hondas. Every Honda model is clearance priced. Accords, Civics, HRVs, CRVs, Passports, Pilots, and more. Don't miss the Happy Honda Day sales event with thousands of new Hondas in stock with financing as low as 0.9%. Search your local Honda dealer today. See dealer for financing details. Offer ends 1/4/21.
What can give you a competitive edge in today's red-hot housing market? Rocket can. That's because Rocket Mortgage can give you a verified approval. It could help your offer stand out. Rocket Technology provides a rock-solid verification of your income, assets, and credit, giving sellers greater confidence in you. Go to rocketmortgage.com or call us today at 8338-ROCKET.
A verified approval is based on an underwriter's analysis of your individual financial information, appraisal, and title report. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender license in all 50 states and MLS Consumer Access.org number 3030.
Let's say you just bought a house.
Bad news is, you're one step closer to becoming your parents. You'll proudly mow the lawn. Ask if anybody noticed you mowed the lawn. Tell people to stay off the lawn. Compare it to your neighbor's lawn. And complain about having to mow the lawn again. Good news is, it's easy to bundle home and auto through Progressive and save on your car insurance, which, of course, will go right into the lawn. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and other insurers. Discount not available in all states or situations.
It's not every day you have to replace a water heater, more like every 10 years. The Home Depot can help with a wide selection of the latest models from Rheem and a helpful online water heater buying guide to help make choosing the right Rheem easy. From gas to electric, tankless, even smart models that can spot a leak before it happens. Water heaters have come a long way. You don't have to. Go to HomeDepot.com to find the latest Rheem water heaters and helpful answers and advice from our water heater buying guide. Only from the Home Depot. How doers get more done.
Cozy up for the holidays with 60% off everything at Banana Republic Factory, including soft sweaters, comfy pajamas, must-have gifts, and more from $9.99. Find your nearest store now, only at Banana Republic Factory. Get 50 through 70% off almost everything at Gap Factory and GapFactory.com. Plus, shop new doorbusters for the family, including outerwear, jeans, and our Gap logo crew neck sweatshirt. Find it all at Gap Factory or GapFactory.com through December 14th.
¿Estás cansado de no tener una conexión rápida de Internet? Pues es hora de que tengas AT&T Fiber para una experiencia de Internet más rápida que el cable con velocidades de carga 20 veces más rápidas. Eso significa que pasas menos tiempo subiendo archivos pesados como presentaciones o videos para que aproveches más tu día. Obtén la velocidad que tu familia necesita para ponerse al tanto con los abuelos y las tías por videochat y menos lag cuando tus hijos juegan online. Con velocidades de carga 20 veces más rápidas, AT&T Fiber te da una experiencia de Internet más rápida que el cable. Obtén AT&T Fiber con datos de Internet ilimitados incluidos, sin contrato anual. Disponibilidad limitada en ciertas áreas. Llama al 1-800, es fácil. Las velocidades no se garantizan y varían, según las velocidades combinadas de cargas y descargas en comparación a servicio de 1 giga de los proveedores principales de cable con velocidades de carga de 35 megabits por segundo. Descargas máximas de 940 megabits por segundo normalmente para Internet 1000. Sujeto a restricciones. Verifica disponibilidad en att.com/tu internet.
Capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
A lot of us are still in a bit of a guessing game, trying to determine how severe the downturn will be.
The only thing that can bring an end to the crisis is containing the disease.
Finance.
We are the one country where people depend on employment for health insurance in the middle of a health crisis.
Investment.
Real yield is a scarce asset these days.
It's just unknowable, of course, where things are going.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good Tuesday morning from New York City and points beyond to our worldwide audience. Progress continues on the vaccine front while stimulus talks appear to be stalled, at least for the moment. Equity futures point to a lower open. Treasury markets are calm with the 10-year yielding 0.91%. On the commodities front, WTI crude holds steady about $45 per barrel, while gold rises modestly to about $1,873 per ounce. Let's get the latest on the pre-market equity trading. We turn to Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson. Dave, what are you looking at this morning?
I'm looking at a lot of losses, frankly. I mean, starting with Tesla. The electric car makers lower by 2.5% after deciding to raise as much as $5 billion. Tesla's selling stock for the third time in 10 months. The latest sale was announced the day after the company's market value exceeded $600 billion for the first time. Share sales will take place over time at prevailing market prices, so it won't all happen at once. Nonetheless, Tesla lower. And then you have a bunch of companies falling after earnings reports. AutoZone's down 2%. The auto parts retailer's fiscal first quarter revenue trailed analysts' average estimate in the Bloomberg survey, though earnings beat projections. Brown-Forman's off 0.5%. The maker of Jack Daniels and other spirits reported fiscal second quarter earnings that came up short of estimates. Toll Brothers down 3.5%. Analysts said the luxury home builder's fiscal first quarter forecasts were disappointing. Now, profit and revenue for the fourth quarter surpassed estimates. And H&R Block's off 2.5%. The tax preparer had a wider loss for the fiscal second quarter than analysts expected. Then there's SiriusXM Holdings up 1%. Radio host Howard Stern extended his contract with the satellite broadcaster for 5 more years. Now, terms of the deal weren't disclosed, and I should note Bloomberg Radio provides programming to SiriusXM on channel 119. Another management, or at least a personnel move on Semiconductor up 4%. The chip maker named former Cypress Semiconductor CEO Hassan El-Khoury as its top executive. He'll succeed Keith Jackson, who's retiring. Smile Direct Club's up 5%. The online seller of teeth straighteners was raised the equivalent of buy from Hold Wolf Research. Now, Smile Direct is higher even though a federal judge invalidated a patent in dismissing a lawsuit filed against a rival. U.S. Steel's up 4.5%. The steelmaker reached an agreement to take full control of Big River Steel for $774 million. U.S. Steel expects the deal to add to earnings right after it's completed. The company bought about a 50% stake in Big River last year. Stitch Fix. The move of the day so far in early trading. At the moment, stock's up 37%. The online personal stylist had an unexpected profit for the fiscal first quarter, leading short sellers to buy back shares. Now, data compiled by Bloomberg showed 37% of Stitch Fix's stock available for trading had been borrowed and sold. So, the gain really looks like a case of short sellers having to cover what they had previously sold. MicroStrategy, though, down 5.5% to end with a bit of fundraising as we started. The business intelligence provider plans to sell $400 million of convertible debt and use the proceeds to increase a stake in Bitcoin. Now, MicroStrategy has been buying the cryptocurrency since July and spent $50 million in Bitcoin just last week.
David Wilson, thank you so much. We thank Nora Rubini and Benoit Carré. Really, that was a fabulous set of interviews with Mr. Carré of the Bank of International Settlements, one of our leading monetary theorists, and Professor Rubini, also in international economics. Not that they were opposing each other on Bitcoin, but just two very different views. That was a real high point last week. Futures at negative 15. Bloomberg surveillance. Brought to you by Cohn Resnick Advisory Assurance Tax. Learn why Hedge Week and Private Equity Wire readers named Cohn Resnick their top audit and tax firm for 2020. Visit cohnresnick.com/finance. Paul?
Yeah, Tom, it looks like our good friends at Pfizer getting some good news from the Food and Drug Administration, concluding that the vaccine is safe and effective. Let's get the latest. We turn to Drew Armstrong, Bloomberg senior editor for healthcare. Drew, talk to us about what's going on with Pfizer. It seems like good news. Give us a sense of how this timing may play out.
So I think the expectation is that FDA will be able to move very, very quickly, assuming that there is a positive committee meeting and assuming that the agency senior leaders who are going to make this assessment agree with the staff report. And I think there's no indications that either of those things would go wrong. So there's a public meeting on Thursday of these outside advisors to the agency. I would not be shocked to see FDA itself act on an emergency approval here, or an emergency authorization, I should say, within a day or so. I think there's a desire by the agency to move very, very quickly here.
Who's our 90-year-old grandmother? How do you pick that?
I think one of the things that is going to be a real challenge with this is, dealing with these first couple of, first kind of hundreds of thousands of doses that go out and getting them to people. Obviously, healthcare providers who are on the front lines of this are going to be some of the first folks, and then, people in nursing homes who are highly vulnerable.
I hate to make up the script, Drew, but President Trump could get some massive play by getting in the Trumpmobile, going over to Walter Reed, and getting vaccinated along with all the people that helped him in his great illness. I mean, that would be a great way to jumpstart this, wouldn't it?
I think you're going to see a lot of efforts like that. I know there's discussions with former presidents about showing them getting vaccinated. One of the really, really important things with any kind of public health campaign is communication, is setting those examples, and is, emphasizing to people, hey, go and get vaccinated, giving them confidence in the data, and confidence that the FDA is continuing to monitor these vaccines for safety and efficacy, and communicating really clearly with them about both the importance of being vaccinated, but also being very, very clear about what potential, side effects of these vaccines are, which are not non-existent, especially kind of these just after injection reactions that a lot of people have, which, if you've gotten a flu shot before and had kind of almost felt like you had the flu for a day, you're familiar with that. There's the communication and the public health message around this is going to be incredibly important to making any vaccine campaign a success.
Well, it's interesting, Drew. I mean, to that effect, I have not experienced a campaign to get me comfortable with this vaccine. I just saw this morning on Twitter a PhD student at Cornell on a whiteboard. He explained to me how this all works, and now I feel increasingly comfortable. But do I have to depend upon a PhD candidate from Cornell making a TikTok video on Twitter to get me up to speed? Is it the expectation that these pharmaceutical companies or the U.S. government or the CDC or who's going to get in front of this?
So I don't think that I will shock any of our listeners when I say that this administration has not perhaps done the most effective and trusted job in terms of communicating public health information during the pandemic. You see a lot of different messages from a lot of different highly visible spokespeople as it relates to that, and certainly very little effort to communicate around a vaccine campaign. I think some of that is kind of unsurprising as an administration winds down. I think some of it is probably just of this administration in particular. This has not been the standard public health playbook or communications in public health playbook over the last 10 months, and probably to our great detriment. So I think that right now, yes, you are counting on a Cornell grad student posting things on TikTok to tell you about vaccine safety, unfortunately.
Drew, what happens in the next 24 hours? I mean, you're knee deep in this with Dr. Fazeli. What happens just in the next 24 hours for we mere mortals?
The main thing that we got to watch is what happens at this advisory committee. You can go out and read the FDA report if people go on Bloomberg, I believe, and read the story. It should be playing at the top of the website right now, on top of the terminal. It is linked to the FDA report that has a really great breakdown, even beyond our great breakdown in our article of exactly what the data says here. Thursday is the day to watch, and then essentially, we're on an hour-by-hour watch for a vaccine emergency authorization to come across. And then it's, shots into arms within hours after that. Drew, great briefing. Thank you so much. Paul Sweeney, that was wonderful, talking about the Cornell PhD.
Yeah, it was. I tell you what, it was quite informative, and I think a lot of folks are going to get their information that way. But you just feel like there needs to be something more broad or more coordinated, as we kind of embark on this vaccination phase.
Well, we will see. Futures -16. With our news in New York City, here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Paul, thank you very much. A retired British shop clerk has received the first shot in the country's COVID-19 vaccination program, signaling the start of a global immunization effort intended to offer a route out of the pandemic that has killed 1.5 million people. The UK is the first Western country to start a mass vaccination program after British regulators last week authorized the use of the COVID-19 shot developed by U.S. drug maker Pfizer and Germany's BioNTech. Prime Minister Boris Johnson visited the London hospital this morning, one of the sites where Pfizer's coronavirus vaccine is being given to thousands of elderly people.
People are having the vaccine for the first time, and it will gradually make a huge, huge difference. But I stress gradually because, we're not there yet.
The U.S. and European Union authorities may approve the vaccine in the coming days, fueling a global immunization effort. Almost all of Kentucky's 120 counties are reported to be in the COVID-19 red zone. Governor Andy Beshear continues to appeal to his residents to take precautions.
We got to slow down the train before we stop it and before we turn it around.
Beshear says, though, he will not extend executive orders restricting businesses. President-elect Joe Biden will nominate retired four-star Army General Lloyd Austin to be Secretary of Defense. That's according to people familiar with the decision who spoke on condition of anonymity. If confirmed by the Senate, Austin would be the first black Pentagon chief. Austin retired from the Army in 2016, which means he would require a congressional waiver to take the job. Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios, this is Global News, 24 hours a day, on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Tom Pohl.
Michael Barr, thanks so much. A data check. Paul, help me out here with the currency market. I mean, pretty much flat air. Daniel Katsev over at BNP Paribas calling weaker dollar. Yen's there, 104.06. Euro gives it up the last couple days.
Yeah, looking at the DXY index, Tom, 90 spot, 8.3. It's really been weak over the past several weeks here, Tom. You think about it with the Fed and Fed Chairman Powell talking about rates lower for longer. It's tough to make a bull case for the dollar here. But then you look at relative to the other currencies out there, it's tough to find a place to be. But again, you're seeing the yen kind of steady here today, Tom. But the pound giving it up a little bit because those Brexit talks just, it's just not where you want to be right now.
Yeah, I was fascinated by that today. I actually looked at Le Monde in French, and it's just amazing how the Brexit discussion is a London fixation. It seemed to be less over in Europe. I would point out, folks, strong Asia Pacific Rim, not through to record high, but that ADXY, Bloomberg JP Morgan Index, really buttressed right up at resistance, ready to break out to new foreign exchange strength versus the dollar. Renminbi really shows it all, 6.53 on yuan with a 6.52 earlier this morning. In the equity space, as they say, futures at negative 15, the VIX 21.79. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Why do nothing, not even the Grinch, can steal our holidays this year? Come ride flying motorbikes and sip hot butterbeer. Make mischief with minions, get wrapped up with raptors. Come sing and maybe scream. The holidays at Universal Orlando Resort are here, now through January 3rd.
Hoobug.
Florida residents save up to $100 on select passes. Purchased by December 17th. Lockout dates and restrictions apply. Visit universalorlando.com for details and important safety guidelines.
The Happy Honda Day sales event is here, and thousands of new Hondas are marked with clearance prices and payments. Well-qualified buyers can save thousands with financing as low as 0.9% on select 2020 Hondas. Every Honda model is clearance priced. Accords, Civics, HRVs, CRVs, Passports, Pilots, and more. Don't miss the Happy Honda Day sales event with thousands of new Hondas in stock with financing as low as 0.9%. Search your local Honda dealer today. See dealer for financing details. Offer ends 1/4/21.
This holiday season, shoot for the stars with sparkling gifts from Pandora Jewelry. When you shop December 7th through 14th, a sterling silver Moon and Stars open bangle is yours free with any purchase of $125 or more. Shop Pandora Jewelry today. Free bangle with purchase while supplies last at participating retailers. No substitutions. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Visit the Pandora store at Southland Mall, located off Florida's Turnpike on Southwest 205th Street and US 1. Pandora, Southland Mall.
What can give you a competitive edge in today's red-hot housing market? Rocket can. That's because Rocket Mortgage can give you a verified approval. It could help your offer stand out. Rocket Technology provides a rock-solid verification of your income, assets, and credit, giving sellers greater confidence in you. Go to rocketmortgage.com or call us today at 8338-ROCKET.
A verified approval is based on an underwriter's analysis of your individual financial information, appraisal, and title report. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender license in all 50 states and MLSConsumerAccess.org number 3030.
If you purchased Roundup brand weed and grass killer products, you may be entitled to payment from a proposed class action settlement. This settlement is about product labeling, not personal injury, so physical injury is not necessary to make a claim. Visit RoundupWGKSettlement.com to file a claim online.
Let's say you just bought a house. Bad news is, you're one step closer to becoming your parents. You'll proudly mow the lawn. Ask if anybody noticed you mowed the lawn. Tell people to stay off the lawn. Compare it to your neighbor's lawn. And complain about having to mow the lawn again. Good news is, it's easy to bundle home and auto through Progressive and save on your car insurance, which, of course, will go right into the lawn. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and other insurers. Discount not available in all states or situations.
It's not every day you have to replace a water heater, more like every 10 years. The Home Depot can help with a wide selection of the latest models from Rheem and a helpful online water heater buying guide to help make choosing the right Rheem easy. From gas to electric, tankless, even smart models that can spot a leak before it happens. Water heaters have come a long way. You don't have to. Go to HomeDepot.com to find the latest Rheem water heaters and helpful answers and advice from our water heater buying guide. Only from the Home Depot. How doers get more done.
Cozy up for the holidays with 60% off everything at Banana Republic Factory, including soft sweaters, comfy pajamas, must-have gifts, and more from $9.99. Find your nearest store now, only at Banana Republic Factory. Get 50 through 70% off almost everything at Gap Factory and GapFactory.com. Plus, shop new doorbusters for the family, including outerwear, jeans, and our Gap logo crew neck sweatshirt. Find it all at Gap Factory or GapFactory.com through December 14th.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Global stocks are sliding for a second day, and U.S. futures falling with investors focusing on a rise in virus infections and tougher restrictions. Oil is falling toward $45 a barrel in New York on speculation that near-term demand is at risk. S&P futures are dropping and Tesla shares slipping after the company said it plans to sell as much as $5 billion in stock. Right now, S&P futures are down 15 points. Dow futures down 112. NASDAQ futures down 21. The DAX in Germany is down about 0.3%. 10-year Treasury up 4/32 yield 0.90%. Yield on the 2-year 0.14%. NYMEX crude oil is down 0.7% or 34 cents at $45.42 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.4% or $7.60 at $18.73.70 an ounce. The euro 1.2126 against the dollar. British pound 1.3359 and the yen 104.04. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thanks so much. We appreciate that. So as we think about the pandemic here, on the one hand, we've got some very, very positive news about vaccines and what those bode for, kind of 2021. But on the other hand, we've got just rising cases, really, really negative metrics kind of across the board. And that's what President-elect Joe Biden will inherit in just several weeks. To get a sense of kind of how President-elect Biden plans to deal with that from a cabinet perspective, we welcome Bloomberg Law healthcare reporter Shira Stein. Shira, thanks so much. We've had President-elect Biden filling out some of his top positions on the healthcare front. What do you kind of glean from some of his appointments?
Yeah, he's picked kind of a really interesting group of folks who can both deal with the pandemic and deal with his other top healthcare priority, which is bolstering the Affordable Care Act. So he is bringing back former Surgeon General Vivek Murthy to return as Surgeon General. He's bringing in Jeff Zients to run the COVID-19 coordination out of the White House. He has asked Dr. Anthony Fauci to serve as chief medical advisor to COVID-19, and he has accepted. We also have a really interesting pick in Dr. Marcela Nunez-Smith, who's going to be serving as the COVID-19 Equity Task Force Chair. She has a lot of experience in dealing with how COVID-19 disparities affect communities of color, and I think that's going to be another huge thing we're going to see from them.
Sharon, good morning to 106.1 FM up in Boston. Out of MGH comes Professor Rochelle Walensky, to run CDC. Whether it's Walensky going into Atlanta and CDC, or it's the California Attorney General going into HHS, what are they walking into? What do those buildings look like? What do those bureaucracies look like after the last 4 years?
Yeah, the trust in the CDC is at, I'd say, probably an all-time low. Dr. Walensky has talked about previously before the announcement of her becoming CDC director that she thinks it's important to bring back trust into the CDC, to trust the doctors, trust in science. She tweeted about that yesterday. So she's going to have a really hard job ahead of her. The CDC is really struggling right now. Javier Becerra, the Attorney General of California, he, I think, is going to spend a lot more time focusing on how you get more healthcare coverage, how you bring down healthcare costs. Obviously, we're in the middle of a pandemic, but people are having trouble affording healthcare. We're still seeing issues around people being able to get COVID-19 testing and being able to afford those testing, even though it should be free. Based on what Congress has legislated. So I think there's going to be a lot of work for them to do as they come in.
Sure. It's interesting. We're in an odd time here. The cases are just exploding across the United States and globally, for that matter. What is your sense that the Biden administration will look to do on January 20th at just after noon here Eastern time? It seems like the issue is, does this national issue, this national problem, this national pandemic, does it require a federal response? What do you think we're going to hear from the Biden administration?
Yeah, absolutely. They think that there is a lack of a national plan. The Trump administration would disagree, obviously, but I expect them to do everything from focusing on getting vaccine distributed, improving contact testing and contact tracing and testing. We're going to see them come up with plans on how to use the Defense Production Act to increase the supply of PPE and other necessary supplies. There is going to be so much action. I think our heads are going to spin in the first 100 days of the Biden administration.
Sure. Just one final question with all these changeovers is how does their world change with a vaccine? I mean, it's such a monumental occasion. I mean, isn't that the number one priority of priorities, is to get distribution of a vaccine and any necessary booster shots?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be there. I'm sure I know they're having discussions with HHS staff right now about that. It's going to be difficult because it's going to take time to get everybody vaccinated and to get to the point where we have what's called herd immunity. And so for a while, we're probably going to have to continue to see social distancing and masking. Dr. Walensky has talked about that previously. She wrote an op-ed and a study about it. We're still going to have to take those precautions until we can get to herd immunity.
Shearstein, thank you so much. Great brief. Greatly appreciate that with Bloomberg Law and the healthcare coverage here, more of the politics of Washington. Paul, it's a huge deal. I mean, it sort of crept up on me. I really didn't see it coming, but there was a 90-year-old grandmother in the middle of England, right near where Pharaoh grew up, getting the first shot. I mean, it was very cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. It really hit home. It hit home here in the States. I think, so you like to think it's going to have a good impact there in the UK and other markets. And I think what the issue here is, as Shira suggested, is kind of getting people to really embrace this vaccine so that we can get to herd immunity as quickly as possible and as safely as possible. Because, I think around the world, but certainly here in the U.S., Tom, we have some folks that are very concerned about vaccinations in general. And perhaps this one in particular, so that I suspect there really needs to be some type of really coordinated public relations effort to kind of get people on board.
I get it. There's got to be public relations and all that, but isn't the ultimate public relations where schools say you can't come without a vaccination, or airlines say, what does a city bus do? They say, you can't get on the bus? I don't know.
How about if your favorite watering hole down at the corner, Tom, says, hey, you can't show me you got a shot, you can't come into the bar and have a cocktail.
Yeah. I mean,
that'll get people. And I saw a funny thing on Twitter, Tom. You said you put this thing in a vape. The kids will come in and they'll get their shot via vape immediately. So I have to figure out a way to make it cool, to make it acceptable, to make it patriotic. I'm not sure kind of what the plan is. I mean,
back diphtheria back 120 years ago. It was a miracle what they did with diphtheria, and then penicillin, and the vaccine of polio, which you and I lived. I mean, I don't understand why this is even a discussion, because society will make the rules.
I think so, Tom. I think so, and I think this is probably going to go. Hopefully, we can get this out there and get it out there in size and scale and get people on board.
Yeah, we will see. Futures at -15, Dow futures at -104, the VIX 21.78. Stay with us. We need to get the market open. This is Bloomberg.
Startups and...
What can help you take advantage of today's low mortgage rates and save money? Rocket can. You could save hundreds of dollars every month by refinancing with Rocket Mortgage at today's near historic low rates. If your current rate is over 4%, you could lower your payment by over $150 a month, saving thousands in interest every year. Call us today at 8338-ROCKET or go to rocketmortgage.com.
Savings are based on Quicken Loans, internal data. Points and fees may apply. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender. Licensed in all 50 states. NMLS Consumer Access.org. Number 3330.
The Happy Honda Day sales event is here, and thousands of new Hondas are marked with clearance prices and payments. Well-qualified buyers can save thousands with financing as low as 0.9% on select 2020 Hondas. Every Honda model is clearance priced. Accords, Civics, HRVs, CRVs, Passports, Pilots, and more. Don't miss the Happy Honda Day sales event with thousands of new Hondas in stock with financing as low as 0.9%. Search your local Honda dealer today. See dealer for financing details. Offer ends 1/4/21.
Want to hear something amazing? Discover matches all the cash back you earn on your credit card at the end of your first year, automatically, dollar for dollar, with no limit on how much you can earn. Extra cash? Come on, how amazing is that? In fact, it's even more amazing when you realize all the places where Discover is accepted. 99% of places in the U.S. that take credit cards. So when it comes to Discover, get used to hearing yes more often. Learn more at discover.com/yes. 2020 Nielsen Report. Limitations apply.
This holiday season, shoot for the stars with sparkling gifts from Pandora Jewelry. When you shop December 7th through 14th, a sterling silver Moon and Stars open bangle is yours free with any purchase of $125 or more. Shop Pandora Jewelry today. Free bangle with purchase while supplies last at participating retailers. No substitutions. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Visit the Pandora store at Southland Mall, located off Florida's Turnpike on Southwest 205th Street and US 1. Pandora, Southland Mall.
Let's say you just bought a house. Bad news is, you're one step closer to becoming your parents. You'll proudly mow the lawn. Ask if anybody noticed you mowed the lawn. Tell people to stay off the lawn. Compare it to your neighbor's lawn. And complain about having to mow the lawn again. Good news is, it's easy to bundle home and auto through Progressive and save on your car insurance, which, of course, will go right into the lawn. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and other insurers. Discount not available in all states or situations.
Professional painters know waiting between coats for trim, doors, and cabinets to dry is time out of your day and money out of your pocket. Bare Premium Cabinet and Trim Enamel from the Home Depot lets you finish faster. With excellent flow and leveling, it dries to the touch in 1 hour, and less dry time means less downtime. Bare Premium Cabinet and Trim Enamel, just $39.98 a gallon, and that's before the Pro Extra discount. Only at the Home Depot. How doers get more done. Available in-store and online.
This holiday season, shoot for the stars with sparkling gifts from Pandora Jewelry. When you shop December 7th through 14th, a sterling silver Moon and Stars open bangle is yours free with any purchase of $125 or more. Shop Pandora Jewelry today. Free bangle with purchase while supplies last at participating retailers. No substitutions. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Visit the Pandora store at Southland Mall, located off Florida's Turnpike on Southwest 205th Street and US 1. Pandora, Southland Mall.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 1061 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Good morning, I'm Karen Moscow, along with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney, and the opening bell is brought to you by SEI. Imagine your asset management firm's operational infrastructure as a competitive advantage. Let SEI show you how at SEIC.com/IMS. The S&P 500 is lower at the open, down 0.3% or 10 points at 3681. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down 0.3% or 91 points at 29,977. And the Nasdaq's down 0.1% or 15 points at 12,505. 10-year Treasury up 5/32, yield 0.90%. Yield on the 2-year 0.14%. NYMEX crude oil is down 0.6% or 29 cents at 45.47 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.6% or $10.60 at 1876.40 an ounce. The euro 1.2123 against the dollar. The yen 104.07. Tom and Paul.
Aaron, thanks so much. Greatly appreciated. Negative 82 on the Dow. If you are a bull, if you're in this market, if you've enjoyed the lift, this is an important interview. If you are not in the market, if you've underperformed, if you're in the triple leveraged all cash fund, this is an important interview. Why is it important? Because we're back not 1 year, we're back 2 years. Off the December 2018 low, Ben Laidler is up 27% per year, a gross 58%, because Ben Laidler has said be in the markets. The gentleman from Towers Hudson joins us right now. Ben, congratulations on another spectacular year. You've done it 2 years in a row. What is the framework of early 19 and pandemic March that allows Ben Laidler to be optimistic? Look back, how did you make those calls?
Sentiment had completely capitulated. Policy response was either in place, or I think you could see a policy response was coming in place. And I think the combination of those two sort of sets you up. I mean, we always get too bearish when we're sort of standing at the precipice and looking over. And I think the fact that if you like sets you up for that rebound once sentiment has adjusted, and once I think you have visibility on. So the policy response in place. I think those are the two things.
David Kostin of Goldman Sachs is not only bullish a la Laidler, but he's also extended his x-axis of enthusiasm 2021, 22, and dare I say out to early 2023. Can you extend your x-axis of this great bull market?
It's certainly possible. I mean, we clearly have, more visibility right now. I mean, you have two big puts out there in the market, which I think protect you a lot, which is, policy, fiscal and monetary, and it's going to keep coming, and the vaccine. And again, I think it's very early days. And I really think the rally, might only be getting started. Certainly the rotation from sort of growth to value or to cyclicals has really only got started. Value's still underperformed by over 30% just year to date. I mean, forget about the last decade or so. I think the question sort of further out, looking through that, is just how benign, for how much longer does policy stay sort of very benign? I think the Fed is clearly not going to rush to raise rates, but I think that's what I'd be looking at sort of further out. This sort of policy forbearance has been just been a huge ingredient here, and at some point the punch bowl is going to start being pulled back. But I think it's way premature to have that discussion at this point.
So Ben, kind of where are you in that rotation play into some of the more cyclical names, maybe some of the smaller cap names? They have kind of really turned the corner and performed over the last several months. How much legs do you think is in that trade?
Yeah, a lot. To be brutally honest with you, I mean, I think it's barely begun. I mean, and I think it's coming from two places. As I say, value has only still underperformed by over 30 points, year to date. It's outperformed so far this quarter by 4 percentage points. So it's really only sort of just begun. And if I look at the even more sensitive sort of segments, I mean, we have a sort of reopening basket, which is the most sensitive stocks. I mean, it's cruise lines and airlines, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that's still down, nearly 70. It's still underperformed by nearly 70 percentage points year to date versus the sort of reopening stock. So performance is one. Where I think the surprise is going to come from is on the earnings side. I think we're all underestimating the sort of the upside surprise we're going to get to earnings next year, and that's going to particularly come from these sort of cyclical names. So that's sort of 20% S&P 500 consensus earnings growth for next year. I think when all is said and done, we're going to be closer to 30, and this is sort of going to be a rerun, if you like, of 2010. I mean, normally we overestimate earnings, but coming out of crises, we underestimate them, and I think this is going to be the same again.
So, Ben, what do I do with those big tech names that have been so good to me and other investors really since the financial crisis here? Do I completely rotate out of them, or I just trim a little bit and maybe allocate that capital to maybe, again, some of the cyclical smaller cap names?
I'd probably be trimming back on the ones that have done sort of best. I mean, we have a sort of work from home basket, which has massively outperformed and is on these huge valuations. I would definitely be sort of trimming that back and using that and rotating into the sort of reopeners. But sort of broader tech, I mean, I would certainly hold on to some, sort of teddy bear stocks. I mean, I think these are structural stories. I think, huge financial flexibility. They're going to continue to do very well. Even quarter to date, right? I mean, where we've been having this rotation, tech communications is still up, double digit. So yes, you've made more money in sort of cyclicals and value, but these names I think will continue to do well, even if they, maybe lag a little bit over the next, the next quarter or two.
Ben Laidler, the great structural call has been corporations adjust. How will they adjust next year? Are you going to see more cost cutting, more synergies, more strategic combinations?
I mean, we've seen a lot of that already, right? I mean, cost cutting, a lot of cost cutting this year. I think you're going to get the payback for that next year. I mean, what we're going to get next year is more revenue on a lower cost base. And I think that's the sort of operating leverage and the earnings surprise that we're sort of, building up to next year. And that's why, I don't think we're on 22 times earnings. I think we're on, sort of high teen times earnings. So I think that's one for, I think that's a big one for next year. The other place I would look is sort of the balance sheet. I mean, a lot of, we've obviously had sort of high yield investment grade, this sort of issuance sort of boom this year. Debt levels, have never been higher. I think a lot of that's been precautionary, and we've also seen a lot of M&A this year. So I think you begin to see some sort of deleveraging, and some of this sort of precautionary lending, begin to be given back.
Well, Ben, congratulations. Extraordinary. Folks, to do this 1 year in a row is amazing. And for Laidler to do this 2 years in a row, what's he going to do next year? It'll be a hat trick. Exactly. Ben Laidler, thank you so much. Towers Hudson. Speaking of excellence, Maria Tadeo has the toughest job at Bloomberg. She's in Brussels, which is like its own surreal world. Maria Tadeo, how surreal is Brussels right now as the Prime Minister jets across the North Sea?
Look, I would say it's actually very quiet and it's very nerdy because we're waiting for the Prime Minister to get here, and until he gets here, it really is about the detail. Once he gets here, it will be about the politics, and it will be very theatrical, and it's all about the optics, Tom. You know this very much. This is about the optics. It needs to be seen as difficult.
Come on. I saw our headline clauses, 44, 45, 47. I actually looked up those clauses out of the House of Lords. Thank you, Parliament. And the minutia, Maria, the detail of these paragraph by paragraph discussions does any of these fancy suits and ties and dresses, do any of them actually understand what's in the documents, the language?
Not many, actually. There's very few people that really know what's in the deal. What they know is the political lines. This is what you need to defend. This is what you need to repeat. And when you go on TV, you need to say X, Y, and Z. Essentially, that's what it is. The technicalities are very difficult to understand here. But what they know, and just referring to what you mentioned, the clauses there, is that the UK is now playing nice because they've removed them. And they're now saying, we're not going to be mean. We're not going to break the law. We still want to engage. And the signal that is sending, if you forget about the jargon and the technicality, is that they still want to deal. They still want to negotiate.
So, Maria, the Prime Minister, again, as we're saying, we're waiting his arrival into Brussels. What does he hope to gain by coming to Brussels today? What do you think is his strategy here? What does he want to come away with?
Well, he needs to, be seen as fighting hard, as making the trip here to Brussels to be tough on the European bureaucrats, on the elite, on everyone in Brussels that's working on overly complicated deals, and just remind them that this is really about sovereignty of the UK. But he also wants to really test the waters and the limits. He wants to do what's the red line for Europe and where can he get some wiggle room. That's because ultimately this will come down to two things, and I'm always told this. For the Europeans, it's about protecting the single market, and it's about trusting the UK. For the Prime Ministers to be able to say, I Brexited, and this is it, we have our sovereignty back. The two are difficult and move in different ways. If you find the gray area between the two of them, you have a deal. If you don't, then you don't have a deal.
What's Mr. Macron going to do? I looked at Le Monde today. Maria, you know how phenomenal my French is. Boy, I read that cover to cover. I didn't see much on Brexit, if anything. I mean, are they engaged in this discussion?
They are very much. And actually, if you follow Macron and everyone around him, you know that he is obsessed by Europe. He loves to talk about Europe. This is everything that he cares about. The problem is that he needs to deal with the national politics, and he has an election coming up. And Macron, I would say, is going through a very interesting transition. You know, he started as a young man. It's a startup nation. We're going to turn France upside down. That's really changed now. He's now portraying himself as the man who's going to protect the French. So he's grown up into this. This is about protecting the French. It's about protecting fishermen. It's about protecting the country. It's about protecting the freedom of the country. So really, he's going through a transition that is very much seen also in the way that he negotiates, in which he says, I have a veto right, and I can use it if I think it's needed, and I'm going to fight for what I think is right.
Maria Tadeo, thank you so much. Greatly appreciated this morning from Brussels. With our news in New York City, here's Michael Barr.
Tom Paul, thank you very much. UK health authorities are rolling out the first doses of a widely tested and independently reviewed COVID-19 vaccine. The first shot was given today to a 90-year-old grandmother, Margaret Keenan.
I don't mind the media being around me. It's just the fact I was in the hospital and it was available for me, and it was a big opportunity for me to have it done.
Nursing home residents and frontline healthcare workers are first in line to receive the vaccine. Here in the U.S., the FDA says Pfizer's coronavirus vaccine is highly effective and there are no safety concerns that would prevent it from being granted an emergency use authorization. The report offers a first look at the U.S. review of the vaccine ahead of a public meeting Thursday of outside advisors to the agency. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer has extended a partial shutdown of businesses and schools to December 20th, rejecting appeals to lift a ban on indoor dining while the state tries to curb the spread of the virus.
More and more of our frontline health workers, our doctors and our nurses, our first responders who we rely on every day to protect us, they're getting sick. They're unable to come into work because of the rapid spread of COVID-19 in all of our communities.
Whitmer said that the 12 extra days will enable the state health department to assess how Thanksgiving travel affected the spread of COVID. President Trump is said to have called the Speaker of the Pennsylvania House twice this past week to make the request to help reverse his loss in the state. According to the Washington Post, the calls confirmed by House Speaker Brian Cutler's office make Pennsylvania the third state where Trump has directly attempted to overturn the election he lost to Biden. Trump also is said to have called Georgia and Michigan. Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studios, this is Global News, 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Tom Paul.
Michael Barr, thanks so much. Red on the screen, but not so much. A little better than the futures an hour ago. Negative 24, fractional on the Dow. 30,000. We're at that level. 30,047. I'm still not used to the S&P statistic. 3685. Down 7 points on the S&P 500. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
This is a Bloomberg.
Cozy up for the holidays with 60% off everything at Banana Republic Factory, including soft sweaters, comfy pajamas, must-have gifts, and more from $9.99. Find your nearest store now, only at Banana Republic Factory. Get 50 through 70% off almost everything at Gap Factory and gapfactory.com. Plus, shop new doorbusters for the family, including outerwear, jeans, and our Gap logo crew neck sweatshirt. Find it all at Gap Factory or gapfactory.com through December 14th.
The Happy Honda Days sales event is here, and thousands of new Hondas are marked with clearance prices and payments. Well-qualified buyers can save thousands with financing as low as 0.9% on select 2020 Hondas. Every Honda model is clearance priced. Accords, Civics, HRVs, CRVs, Passports, Pilots, and more. Don't miss the Happy Honda Days sales event with thousands of new Hondas in stock with financing as low as 0.9%. Search your local Honda dealer today. See dealer for financing details. Offer ends 1/4/21.
Doris Market has some experience pairing wine and cheeses, and we're ready to help pair you with the perfect combination from our collection of high-quality wines and cheeses, including the hand-stretched mozzarella made by the Doris cheesemaker each day. Whether you're looking to impress your guests or enjoy a solo afternoon snack, Doris Markets have what you're looking for. Doris Italian Market. Stop by to experience gourmet shopping without the gourmet prices.
This holiday season, shoot for the stars with sparkling gifts from Pandora Jewelry. When you shop December 7th through 14th, a sterling silver Moon and Stars open bangle is yours free with any purchase of $125 or more. Shop Pandora Jewelry today. Free bangle with purchase while supplies last at participating retailers. No substitutions. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Visit the Pandora store at Southland Mall, located off Florida's Turnpike on Southwest 205th Street and US 1. Pandora, Southland Mall.
What can give you a competitive edge in today's red-hot housing market? Rocket can. That's because Rocket Mortgage can give you a verified approval. It could help your offer stand out. Rocket Technology provides a rock-solid verification of your income, assets, and credit, giving sellers greater confidence in you. Go to rocketmortgage.com or call us today at 8338-ROCKET.
A verified approval is based on an underwriter's analysis of your individual financial information, appraisal, and title report. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender license in all 50 states and MLS Consumer Access.org number 3030.
It's not every day you have to replace a water heater, more like every 10 years. The Home Depot can help with a wide selection of the latest models from Rheem and a helpful online water heater buying guide to help make choosing the right Rheem easy. From gas to electric, tankless, even smart models that can spot a leak before it happens. Water heaters have come a long way. You don't have to. Go to HomeDepot.com to find the latest Rheem water heaters and helpful answers and advice from our water heater buying guide. Only from the Home Depot. How doers get more done.
Let's say you just bought a house. Bad news is, you're one step closer to becoming your parents. You'll proudly mow the lawn, ask if anybody noticed you mowed the lawn, tell people to stay off the lawn, compare it to your neighbor's lawn, and complain about having to mow the lawn again. Good news is, it's easy to bundle home and auto through Progressive and save on your car insurance, which, of course, will go right into the lawn. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and other insurers. Discount not available in all states or situations.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. Stocks are falling as a surge in coronavirus cases fuels concern over tougher restrictions while negotiations over further stimulus slowed down in Congress. The S&P 500 is extending losses into a second day. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. The S&P is down about 0.2% or 7 points at 3684. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down 0.1% or 25 points at 30,048, and the Nasdaq is down 0.3% or 36 points at 12,484. 10-year Treasury up 6/32, yield 0.90%, yield on the 2-year 0.14%. NYMEX crude oil down 0.2% or 9 cents at 45.67 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.7% or $12.60 at 1878.70 an ounce. The euro 1.2128 against the dollar. The yen 104.08. Tesla is down more than 2% as the electric car maker plans to raise as much as $5 billion, tapping capital markets for a third time this year. Pfizer is up about 0.7% after U.S. regulators gave early indications they may grant emergency use authorization to its COVID-19 vaccine. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Thanks so much, Karen. Greatly appreciate it. There is a photograph out of our past. Think 12 years after the Civil War, of Cadet Flipper, Flipper, of Thomasville, Georgia. He was the first African-American to graduate from West Point. And now another gentleman from Thomasville, Georgia, is considered to make American history as a Secretary of Defense. Our Kevin Cirilli joins us here on General Austin. Kevin, was this a surprise to see General Austin's name picked?
It was. To be quite candid with you, there were other names on the list, but without question, this would be a glass ceiling shattering moment. He would be, if confirmed, he would be the first black leader of the Department of Defense. But I think from a broader process standpoint, he does face significant challenges before his nomination. Chief among them is that he's only been in civilian life for 4 years. You would need a waiver from Congress in order to beat the 7-year threshold that is required for this particular position. And so in addition to that, there also is a larger ideological debate about whether or not someone from the military, as has been accustomed in years past, especially in the Trump administration, should be leading the department. But then finally, we should note that with regards to that waiver, Republican-controlled Senate did grant that waiver for some of President Trump's picks.
No, go ahead, Paul, please.
No,
please.
I was just going to wonder, Kevin, why do you think, what do we know about this general and his worldview? Because, as we've seen over the last 4 years, the Trump administration has kind of really pulled back from a lot of the international role that the U.S. has historically played since the end of World War II. What do we know about this particular general?
3 things. First and foremost, he is the former head of U.S. Central Command. Secondly, as it relates to geopolitics, whomever is confirmed for this particular pick will have a great deal of influence in shaping the spheres of the Middle East and truth withdrawals that the current president has withdrawn troops from and shifted troops around the region. And then finally, this whomever is confirmed for this position will also deal in the immediacy in the immediate short term with the threat of North Korea. Typically, North Korea tests missiles, and whenever there is a U.S. transition of power, they have been more brazen in terms of their economic ties with China as well.
Kevin, just because of time, and I'm going to rip up the script here as Cirilli knows I can do. He particularly likes that on Tuesday. Friday, it's impossible. I mentioned Cadet Flipper of Thomasville, Georgia, who was basically drummed out of the military in a different time, court-martialed, and there was basically a 60-year, 70-year battle to have him pardoned. He was pardoned by William Jefferson Clinton in 1999. He has a bust at West Point, etc. Give us an update on the pardons, which are not nearly as dramatic as that of Cadet Flipper, who served like dances with wolves in the far west.
Well, in terms of former President Clinton, we should note he also carried the state of Georgia, and he was one of the first modern Democrats to do so in 1992. Yeah. And similarly, President-elect Joe Biden also carried Georgia, which is why Democrats are so bullish on winning some of the Senate races on January 5th in the Peach State. In terms of the current president and where pardons go, look, I think you could anticipate there to be additional pardons. I think that there's been a lot of speculation about preempted pardoning, which would be unprecedented, but at the same time, such has been the White House years that is the Trump presidency.
I mean, Michael Ludwig wrote a beautiful essay on this today, folks. I sent it around. I believe in the Washington Post. I can't remember right now. My brain's too small for that. Kevin, what's going to be the legal battle of pardons for people who haven't committed a crime?
Well, that's where the legal scholars, that is where I will report on the legal scholars and not pretend that I don't have a law degree.
It's a cliche, but Kevin,
much to the chagrin of my parents, but that's another story.
It's uncharted territory, right? I mean,
it is uncharted. No. Joking aside, it is completely uncharted territory, and it would set up a fascinating development in terms of just how far the New York courts, for example, would be able to investigate the financial dealings of a former president. No one knows what precisely President Trump wants to do on January 21st and the days that follow.
So, Kevin, let's talk about the Biden administration. What do you think, as we get these vaccine news, very good news coming over the last several weeks, what do you expect the Biden administration to do as it relates to the pandemic day one?
Candidly, it's going to be about making sure the supply chains are up and ready in terms of the vaccination. Yesterday on Bloomberg Sound On, I spoke with Senator Ben Cardin, a Democrat from Maryland, who actually had introduced bipartisan legislation with Republicans and Democrats, John Thune, even one of the top senators in Republican leadership in the Senate, that would allow for a public access, a public campaign, public service. There it is, public service campaign to make sure that folks trust the vaccination front.
Can you explain? I'm looking at the New Orleans Saints. Win.
Here we go.
And now I'm looking at the Eagles. LLLL. Thank God for the Dallas Cowboys. November 1.
Well, see, he's provoking me. I mean, it's like a trigger, you know. What do you want me to say, Tom? What do you want me to say? You want to rip on me? You want to rip on the Birds a little bit more and go with the Cowboys? Seriously?
The capacity in Philadelphia is 69,696. What's the Eagles' strategy in front of 69,696?
Doug Peterson needs to start Jalen Hurts.
There you go.
That's the strategy. Okay, he needs to know why, because I got to be careful. I'm going to be careful. He should start Jalen Hurts.
I got it. There it is. Kevin Cirilli, what we need to know. Thank you so much, our Chief Washington correspondent. Red on the screen, but not so much red on the screen. The Dow, negative 24. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
Imagine. 1, 2, 3, go. DoorDash presents Art for Foodies, available at artforfoodies2020.com.
From Wednesday, December 2nd through Sunday, December 6th, DoorDash is bringing art to your door to support Miami restaurants and artists. Order empanadas, ceviche, patacones, arepas, tacos, yuca frita, or ropa vieja using the DoorDash app. And the person with the most orders will be the owner of that unique Latino piece of art. Learn more at artforfoodies2020.com.
The Happy Honda Days sales event is here, and thousands of new Hondas are marked with clearance prices and payments. Well-qualified buyers can save thousands with financing as low as 0.9% on select 2020 Hondas. Every Honda model is clearance priced. Accords, Civics, HRVs, CRVs, Passports, Pilots, and more. Don't miss the Happy Honda Days sales event with thousands of new Hondas in stock with financing as low as 0.9%. Search your local Honda dealer today. See dealer for financing details. Offer ends 1/4/21.
This holiday season, shoot for the stars with sparkling gifts from Pandora Jewelry. When you shop December 7th through 14th, a sterling silver Moon and Stars open bangle is yours free with any purchase of $125 or more. Shop Pandora Jewelry today. Free bangle with purchase while supplies last at participating retailers. No substitutions. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Visit the Pandora store at Southland Mall, located off Florida's Turnpike on Southwest 205th Street and US 1. Pandora, Southland Mall.
What can give you a competitive edge in today's red-hot housing market? Rocket can. That's because Rocket Mortgage can give you a verified approval. It could help your offer stand out. Rocket Technology provides a rock-solid verification of your income, assets, and credit, giving sellers greater confidence in you. Go to rocketmortgage.com or call us today at 8338-ROCKET.
A verified approval is based on an underwriter's analysis of your individual financial information, appraisal, and title report. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender license in all 50 states and MLSConsumerAccess.org number 3030.
Let's say you just bought a house. Bad news is, you're one step closer to becoming your parents. You'll proudly mow the lawn. Ask if anybody noticed you mowed the lawn. Tell people to stay off the lawn. Compare it to your neighbor's lawn. And complain about having to mow the lawn again. Good news is, it's easy to bundle home and auto through Progressive and save on your car insurance, which, of course, will go right into the lawn. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and other insurers. Discount not available in all states or situations.
It's not every day you have to replace a water heater, more like every 10 years. The Home Depot can help with a wide selection of the latest models from Rheem and a helpful online water heater buying guide to help make choosing the right Rheem easy. From gas to electric, tankless, even smart models that can spot a leak before it happens. Water heaters have come a long way. You don't have to. Go to HomeDepot.com to find the latest Rheem water heaters and helpful answers and advice from our water heater buying guide. Only from the Home Depot. How doers get more done.
¿Estás cansado de no tener una conexión rápida de Internet? Pues es hora de que tengas AT&T Fiber para una experiencia de Internet más rápida que el cable con velocidades de carga 20 veces más rápidas. Eso significa que pasas menos tiempo subiendo archivos pesados como presentaciones o videos para que aproveches más tu día. Obtén la velocidad que tu familia necesita para ponerse al tanto con los abuelos y las tías por videochat y menos lag cuando tus hijos juegan online. Con velocidades de carga 20 veces más rápidas, AT&T Fiber te da una experiencia de Internet más rápida que el cable. Obtén AT&T Fiber con datos de Internet ilimitados incluidos, sin contrato anual. Disponibilidad limitada en ciertas áreas. Llama al 1-800, es fácil. Las velocidades no se garantizan y varían, según las velocidades combinadas de cargas y descargas en comparación a servicio de 1 giga de los proveedores principales de cable con velocidades de carga de 35 megabits por segundo. Descargas máximas de 940 megabits por segundo normalmente para Internet 1000. Sujeto a restricciones. Verifica disponibilidad en att.com/tu internet.
Capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Bonnie Quinn and Paul Sweeney.
Will technology lead us out of this crisis?
We don't know how many companies can accept people back on their roster.
The Fed seems to have really flexed its muscles.
There's still a coronavirus risk.
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
To wring out that buy-the-dip mentality, that takes time.
Are we looking at a more damaging break in the labor market?
Does the shape of the yield curve matter?
We're looking at late 2021, early 2022, where it really feels quote-unquote normal.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Bonnie Quinn and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good Tuesday morning from New York City and points beyond to our worldwide audience. Coming up, we're going to chat with Ira Jersey of Bloomberg Intelligence, get his thoughts on the Treasury market. Plus, Professor Mitchell Moss, director, NYU Rudin Center for Transportation, is going to discuss some new research that suggests public transit is not a significant vector for spreading viruses. But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Stocks are downfall. A surge in coronavirus cases fueled concern over tougher restrictions while negotiations over further stimulus slowed down in Congress. Brian Nick, Nuveen chief investment strategist, tells Bloomberg things will simply not bounce back to pre-pandemic levels anytime soon.
So the markets, which have been really just paying attention to a lot of the good news we got in November on a vaccine front, the election producing a divided outcome that was a little bit more benign for policy risk. But now we're more focused on the fact that the economy is in some degree of near-term distress. Certainly, the virus is not improving. The caseloads, hospitalizations, fatalities are getting worse. And we just don't know what the economy is going to look like when it emerges from this.
Well, let's take a look at where we are right now. He's down 0.2%, down 6. The Dow's down 0.1%, down 33, and the Nasdaq's down 0.2%, down 25. The 10-year's up 9/32. The yield 0.89%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil's down 1.1% at $45.25 a barrel, while COMEX gold's up 0.5% at $18.7430 an ounce. The dollar yen 104.08. The euro's $1.2126, and the British pound $1.3329. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Bloomberg Markets is on. Vonnie Quinn and Paul Sweeney.
Greg Jarrett, thank you for that. Well, as Greg said, we have movement lower, but not too panicky, down about 0.2% apiece per index. So let's bring in Dave Wilson to tell us what exactly is going on and what stocks are moving. Dave.
Well, I tell you, Vonnie, it looks like some of the earnings reports that came out today just weren't well received. I mean, as much as anything, that seems to be what's going on here. I'm focusing in on the home builders because we had results out of Toll Brothers, and if you just looked at their latest quarter, you'd say, oh, okay, great. I mean, their earnings, their sales beating analyst average estimates in a Bloomberg survey. But yet, analysts saying that what Toll Brothers had to say about this quarter didn't go over so well, and so you've got the shares of Toll Brothers. Now they focus on luxury homes, so it doesn't give you the whole housing market, but it gives you a segment of it, and the shares are down more than 7%. And then you look at the builders in the S&P 500, and you see there's some of the worst performers on the day. You've got D.R. Horton off 2.8%, Lennar off 3.2%, Pulte Group also down 2.8%. So, that kind of stands out in early trading. The other side of the coin, I suppose, is Equifax. I mean, by far the best performer on the day, up more than 9.5%. Analysts liking what the company had to say when they met with them. So, that is going over well, and you're seeing, some of the ratings change as a result of that. Barclays moving to the equivalent of buy from hold. So, and other analysts increasing their price estimates. So put it all together, and that stock helping to offset a little bit, at least, what's going on with the builders.
And Dave, looking at our good friends at Tesla, again, the stock up about 650% year to date, and looks like Elon Musk is going to tap the equity markets, put some more cash on the balance sheet.
It's interesting, though. I mean, you're talking $5 billion of shares being sold. It's the third sale in the last 10 months. And yet Tesla shares, holding up, you could argue, relatively well. I mean, they're down 1.8%, but that's not a whole lot. given the magnitude of the gains you talk about, for this year. And, of course, the idea that they're selling shares as things kind of go along, it's not $5 billion all in one shot, may help explain the reaction. And then the other side of it is that, we're less than 2 weeks away from Tesla going into the S&P 500. So you're going to have all this demand from funds that track the index. And arguably, it may well be happening already because of the magnitude of the changes that are going to come as Tesla goes into the index, given that it's a $600 billion plus company by market cap, just got above that threshold yesterday. There's an increasing supply of shares coming, and that may help to offset at least some extent the demand that's going to be out there. So, maybe that explains why the stock isn't taking more of a beating in response to this planned share sale.
So a lot of complaining in the last couple of days about the decision by Warner Brothers to move all of its next year's releases, let's say, to HBO Max and have them on theaters at the same time. Is it impacting the stocks of streamers, the stocks of studios?
Haven't really seen it to this point. And, of course, when you think about HBO, I mean, it's part of a much bigger company, right? AT&T is in the mix there, so you wouldn't necessarily see a whole lot given that relationship. So, it's been more perhaps of an artistic issue than it is sort of a business issue at this point. Although you can understand it from the sense of, if you're trying to establish a streaming service like HBO Max is, having that sort of big, marquee kind of shows. I mean, that's the sort of thing that gets people's attention. Just like when Hamilton was put out on Disney Plus, for example. Right. So, to that extent, I mean, you do have sort of an understandable kind of shift going on, and you have the bigger issue with what's going to happen to the movie theater business anyway. Yep. And when you look at the shares of companies like AMC Entertainment, you certainly see that concern show up. But for now, I mean, it's out there. It's clearly an issue. Do people get into the movie business because they want to work for streaming services? Not really, but, the small screen, definitely has its place, and that's sort of where we are at this point.
Well, Dave, let's stick with the media scene here. Our good friends at Sirius XM, stocks up a little bit today. Howard Stern re-upping for another 5 years on satellite radio.
Yeah, I mean, and let's face it, you talk about somebody who kind of helped establish a service. I mean, just like we're talking about with movies, going to HBO Max, Howard Stern, when he went to Sirius XM, you could argue really kind of established that service for a whole lot of people as something to pay attention to. And, of course, we should note that Bloomberg Radio was out on Sirius XM, channel 119, so we sort of have a dog in the hunt, you might say. Nonetheless, Howard Stern, given that he's 66, I mean, the idea they're going to lock him up for 5 more years to continue to provide programming, that's something that you'd think would be well received, and so far it has been, though, like I say, the stock's not moving all that much with a gain of less than 1% at the moment.
I always want to know what Robin gets in those situations. We always hear about Howard Stern's, arrangements, but we never hear about Robin's.
I think she does very well. I think he takes.
You think so?
It's an odd situation there. Howard gets paid this money, whether it's $100 million or what, but then he pays everybody on his team, and so it's kind of his little company within a company. It's a very unique arrangement.
Yeah, but I guess you're never anybody without the sidekick, right, Paul?
Exactly. Exactly.
So, Dave, what should we be looking out for today?
Well, I mean, you've kind of seen it at this point. We got a number of earnings before the opening bell, but nothing coming later. So, now we're in wait for the IPO mode, because don't forget, you've got the delivery service DoorDash. Its shares start trading tomorrow, and then Airbnb follows on Thursday.
It's going to be some huge, interesting deals coming in. This is just a phenomenal IPO market. So it's everybody's taking advantage, Vani, I think, of these all-time highs we're seeing in the markets. Yeah, taking advantage. But it'll be interesting to see, if this market goes back to something resembling sort of normal, how these IPOs will end up having done at that point. I mean, obviously, they're going to do well now because there's not much else to bet on. Everything else has been bet up so much. But do they hold on to their valuations? At some point, does a little air come out of the valuations? We'll have to see. Dave Wilson, thank you. At the One Dave on Twitter. He'll be back in the next hour to talk small and medium-sized companies. Let's get down to Washington, D.C. now. A lot going on down there. Nathan Hager is there for us.
Yeah, certainly, Vani. But the eyes of the world, of course, are on the United Kingdom as the mass immunization against COVID-19 there is underway. Remember the name Margaret Keenan. The 90-year-old was the very first to get that COVID shot.
I'm happy it's happened, and now I've done it, and hopefully it'll help other people come along and do as I did, try and do the best to get rid of this terrible thing.
That vaccine from Pfizer is expected to win emergency approval in the U.S. this Thursday. Ahead of that, the White House is denying a New York Times report that it passed on the chance to lock in an extra 100 million doses last summer. Spokeswoman Kayleigh McEnany.
We contracted for 100 million doses. It's something novel, something Obama-Biden failed to do with the swine flu. It's never been done, and that's credit to having a businessman in the White House.
Dow Jones is reporting that the federal government is in talks with Pfizer to provide doses beyond that initial $100 million. A bipartisan group of lawmakers plans to release an updated outline for its fiscal relief package this afternoon. A spokesman for Democratic Senator Joe Manchin says it will not include liability protections or state and local aid as talks continue on those sticking points. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton says he is taking Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin directly to the Supreme Court, accusing those four swing states of exploiting the pandemic to make last-minute changes to mail-in voting law. Today is the so-called safe harbor deadline for states to certify their presidential electors. Congress is required to accept them unless there is outstanding litigation. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
You've probably heard.
Cozy up for the holidays with 60% off everything at Banana Republic Factory, including soft sweaters, comfy pajamas, must-have gifts, and more from $9.99. Find your nearest store now, only at Banana Republic Factory. Get 50 through 70% off almost everything at Gap Factory and gapfactory.com. Plus, shop new doorbusters for the family, including outerwear, jeans, and our Gap logo crew neck sweatshirt. Find it all at Gap Factory or gapfactory.com through December 14th.
This holiday season, shoot for the stars with sparkling gifts from Pandora Jewelry. When you shop December 7th through 14th, a sterling silver Moon and Stars open bangle is yours free with any purchase of $125 or more. Shop Pandora Jewelry today. Free bangle with purchase while supplies last at participating retailers. No substitutions. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Visit the Pandora store at Southland Mall, located off Florida's Turnpike on Southwest 205th Street and US 1. Pandora, Southland Mall.
The Happy Honda Days sales event is here, and thousands of new Hondas are marked with clearance prices and payments. Well-qualified buyers can save thousands with financing as low as 0.9% on select 2020 Hondas. Every Honda model is clearance priced. Accords, Civics, HRVs, CRVs, Passports, Pilots, and more. Don't miss the Happy Honda Days sales event with thousands of new Hondas in stock with financing as low as 0.9%. Search your local Honda dealer today. See dealer for financing details. Offer ends 1/4/21.
Let's say you just bought a house. Bad news is, you're one step closer to becoming your parents. You'll proudly mow the lawn, ask if anybody noticed you mowed the lawn, tell people to stay off the lawn, compare it to your neighbor's lawn, and complain about having to mow the lawn again. Good news is, it's easy to bundle home and auto through Progressive and save on your car insurance, which, of course, will go right into the lawn. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and other insurers. Discount not available in all states or situations.
What can give you a competitive edge in today's red-hot housing market? Rocket can. That's because Rocket Mortgage can give you a verified approval. It could help your offer stand out. Rocket Technology provides a rock-solid verification of your income, assets, and credit, giving sellers greater confidence in you. Go to rocketmortgage.com or call us today at 8338-ROCKET.
A verified approval is based on an underwriter's analysis of your individual financial information, appraisal, and title report. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender license in all 50 states and MLSConsumerAccess.org number 3030.
As a professional painter, you know your customers want a flat finish, but don't want to pay the price of fighting dirt, grime, and scuffs. Use new Bare Ultra Scuff Defense from the Home Depot for a beautiful flat finish, plus stain and scuff defense. And that price starts at just $29.60 a gallon, and that's before the Pro Extra discount. A flat paint that's too tough to scuff. Bare Ultra Scuff Defense, only at the Home Depot. How doers get more done. Available online and in select stores.
There once was a woman, a host with the most, with plenty of Coca-Cola for a holiday toast. She headed out to share a Coke with friends in town, but outside the door was a gift on the ground. So she reached inside and read the letter. Have a Coke, old friend, because together tastes better.
This season, say thank you to a family member, a friend, a nurse, or a neighbor by sharing an ice cold Coke. Because sharing brings us together, and we know together tastes better.
On the road again. Just can't wait to get on the road again.
The open road is open again, and wherever it takes you, Choice Hotels is there. Get 20% off when you book a stay at choicehotels.com. With over 6,500 locations, including Comfort Inn and Suites, you'll find us wherever you're headed. When you explore Florida, Choice Hotels will be there with a place to lay your head. Get 20% off when you book direct at choicehotels.com. Terms apply. See choicehotels.com/book and save for details.
This holiday, check every gift off your pet's list with Chewy.
Shop their favorite food and treats and spoil them with sweaters, toys, and more. Chewy has everything you need to celebrate with your pets, delivered right to your door. Get fast free shipping on orders over $49. Visit Chewy.com today.
1, 2, 3, go.
DoorDash presents Art for Foodies, available at artforfoodies2020.com. From Wednesday, December 2nd through Sunday, December 6th, DoorDash is bringing art to your door to support Miami restaurants and artists. Order empanadas, ceviche, patacones, arepas, tacos, yuca frita, or ropa vieja using the DoorDash app, and the person with the most orders will be the owner of a unique Latino piece of art. Learn more at artforfoodies2020.com.
The doors are opening.
When is that moment out in the distant future?
Some things will be as they were, others forever changed.
The restaurant industry will never be the same.
Follow every new development here on Bloomberg Radio.
What do we need in terms of maybe the new school of economic thought?
Because the next best thing to magic is insight.
It may take nearly a decade for the U.S. economy to recover.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
The S&P is extending its losses into day number 2, led by utility companies and retailers. Energy shares outperformed. Tesla, Stellantis, the electric car maker, announced plans to raise as much as $5 billion, tapping capital markets for a third time this year. Tesla's down almost 2%. Pfizer's up after U.S. regulators gave early indications they may grant emergency use authorizations to its COVID-19 vaccine, calling the shot highly effective with no safety issues. Let's take a look at what the markets are doing right now. The S&P is down, but not that far, by 0.2%, down 8. The Dow's down less than 0.1%, down 21. And the Nasdaq's down 0.3%, down 37. The 10-year's up 8/32. The yield is 0.89%. West Texas Intermediate crude's down 0.7% at 45.45 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.4% at 1873.20 an ounce. The dollar yen is at 104.15. The euro $1.21.14, and the British pound $1.33.06. American Airlines is expanding pre-flight coronavirus testing in an effort to boost demand for domestic travel. American claims at-home tests would enable passengers with negative results to avoid or shorten COVID-19 quarantines and other restrictions. Right now, American is up almost 2%. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Paul Sweeney and Bonnie Quinn on Bloomberg Radio.
This focus on fixed income is brought to you by PIMCO, a global leader in active fixed income. Learn how PIMCO creates opportunities for investors at pimco.com/bonds. All investments contain risk and may lose value. Consult your investment professional before investing. Ira Jersey is with us now, head of U.S. interest rate strategy for Bloomberg Intelligence. Ira, the 10-year yield is at 89 basis points. What can we expect from the Federal Reserve, which meets next week, December? We're already in December. December 16th at 2 p.m. is when we'll get the statement.
Yeah, so there's a variety of things that the Fed might say. I think one of the big things is they could actually be a little bit more optimistic about future growth expectations. And, so Chair Powell before Congress last week noted that there's potential upside for future growth outlook given vaccine rollout is starting in some jurisdictions around the world today. So I think that's one thing that could be a little bit of a tone change. I still think that they'll be very cautious, and they'll say that they're going to keep interest rates low and policy accommodative for a long period of time. So that's one. And number two, and I think this is one of the more idiosyncratic things that they might do, is that if they want to be a little bit more dovish because they see things like employment not growing as quickly, and they're worried that lockdowns that are likely to continue for at least the next few months could have a detrimental effect on the economy, that they could extend the maturities of what they're buying from in the Treasury market. So there's not a lot else that they can do easily, but that is something that they have a lot of room to do. They could actually take out more market risk and try and keep longer-term interest rates from rising significantly.
So, Ira, it's that time of year when research analysts like yourself put out your outlooks for the coming year. What do you expect in the Treasury market for 2021?
Yeah, so we think that we're calling it a constrained sell-off in treasuries for 2021. But interestingly, even though we only see 10-year yields, say, back to 1.5%, which is not even close to where they were, 2 years ago when they were well above 2%. But that 50, 60 basis point sell-off in 10-year yields and bear steepening in the curve, so longer-term securities yields moving higher than shorter-term yields, it could actually mean that we have the worst return in the Bloomberg Barclays Treasury Index in its history. So, and interestingly, there's only been 4 occasions so far where you've had annualized returns of the Treasury Index that were negative. Because usually what happens is you wind up with, say, a 4% Treasury yield. The market sells off a little bit in bear markets, but that 4% yield that you get, the coupon that you receive, makes up for a lot of the loss. So you wind up with, not a good return, but you still have a positive return of 1% or 1.5%. But that's not the case this year, just because you don't have any yield to basically make up for any of that loss in price that treasuries might go down. So just as an example, if 10-year treasuries move from right where they are now at 90 basis points up to 1%, that would be your break even. That's how much room you have for error. It's almost none. So it's really hard, I think, to own treasuries here. You have to have a lot of conviction that you're going to see, pretty bad economic environment, or have a ton of Fed buying for a very long period of time to be comfortable owning treasuries.
So, Ira, I was reading David Havens of Imperial Capital this morning, and he points out that the global stock of debt with negative yields has now reached a record level. Get this, $17.57 trillion worth of global debt with negative yields. He asks the question, and I'm going to ask you, what's a money manager or pension fund manager to do?
Not be in yields around the world. Although that being said, it depends on where you are, because if you sit in the United States and you hedge your foreign exchange risk and you do what's called a cross currency asset swap, what ends up happening is yields in Japan and the U.S. actually end up being positive. Now, not very positive. They end up being somewhere near where 10-year treasuries are, for example, if you do that for 10-year debt. But if you do all of those hedges, you end up actually gaining a little bit of money. The issue is, I think, if you're a domestic investor in those places where they have negative yields, then the question is, what's your funding cost? Because if you fund, say, at negative 50 basis points, but you can buy a bond in Germany at negative 20 basis points, well, that means your carry is still positive 30 basis points. Now, again, you have no margin for error, because 1 or 2 basis point move means that you lose all of that carry that you were making, but you can find positive carry trades in some of these jurisdictions, just because yield curves are still upward sloping, even though they're negative.
So, Iris, you talk to your institutional investor customers real quickly, 30 seconds. What are they asking you about most right now?
Well, a big thing right now is about LIBOR secession. What's going on with LIBOR? A lot of people have LIBOR exposure both in securities and derivatives, and there's been a lot of talk about how the transition away from LIBOR to the secured overnight financing rate is going, and what's going to happen in 2021. So that's been probably the second biggest story behind COVID and the vaccine in the rates market.
Very interesting. Hey, Ira, thanks so much for joining us. As always, we appreciate your thoughts and perspective on the rates market. Ira Jersey, Chief U.S. Interest Rate Strategist for Bloomberg Intelligence. And Vani, I guess it's really an issue. What more can the Fed do here? They've been so proactive and so aggressive. It seems like the next leg for this economy, it has to come from fiscal stimulus.
Yeah, and obviously we're, getting things dribbling out of Washington all the time, but nothing actually concrete, nothing actually getting done.
Yeah, and I think maybe we're seeing just a little bit of that in the market today, just a little bit of a red on the screen here. Market's not taking much direction here, waiting for the next move out of Washington. We'll have more coming up. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg. At the UPS store, we know you have enough to worry about when it comes to gifts this holiday, like
Cutting board versus hoverboard.
So let our certified packing experts handle all your packing and shipping.
The UPS store.
See Center or visit theupsstore.com for details.
The world's financial decision makers connect on the Bloomberg terminal. The buy side and the sell side together, collaborating across markets and countries in real time, sharing ideas, negotiating trades, and forming an influential network of over 325,000 financial professionals that helps power global markets. Isn't it time you join them? Request a demo at Bloomberg.com/professional.
Bloomberg Money Minute. Lack of progress on stimulus out of Washington and the worsening toll from the pandemic that's causing further restrictions are weighing on market sentiment. Stocks have come back from earlier lows and are now little changed. Regulators gave early indications that they may grant emergency use authorization to Pfizer and BioNTech's vaccine, calling the shot highly effective with no safety issues. The FDA could clear the shot after a key meeting this Thursday. There's one more sign that Elon Musk may be relocating to Texas. The billionaire has now moved his private foundation from California to Austin. Tesla's building a truck and SUV factory there. And a resurgence in nostalgia appears to be boosting the market for collectibles such as sports memorabilia. Heritage Auction's latest sale features a 1979 Wayne Gretzky rookie card that could bring in more than $1 million. Meanwhile, sports card sales on eBay increased 92% from March through May. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
There are a lot of ways to look at the world right now.
Interesting that you've got an overweight on Hong Kong.
And the more of them you can access, the better.
What has to be his strategy?
Perspective.
Who's doing school best?
Clarity.
How do we get it so that the benefits get to everybody?
Expertise.
He seems to have exactly the right combination. It's character plus policy.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. The best of Bloomberg Business Week every business day.
We've got a market sell-off that's spreading around the globe.
The Bloomberg Business Week podcast with Carol Masser.
We're going to talk about the volatility trade that tripped up many.
The day's breaking global business, finance, and tech news, along with smart analysis.
We know the Fed is going to be sure and steady.
The Bloomberg Business Week podcast.
We got to talk about the markets. We got to talk about the Fed news.
Listen today on BloombergRadio.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at seic.com/seize change.
You know your body, and you know when something's off, when something doesn't feel quite right. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, rashes, and fever. They could be signs of lupus. Listen to your body. Take care of yourself. We're here to help you take control of your health. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
When we say Bloomberg brings you the latest financial and business news anywhere, we've actually given the matter quite a bit of thought.
Let's get now to our guest joining us from Bangkok. She joins us on the phone from the Hudson Valley.
Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg. The world is listening. Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up, we're going to be speaking with Professor Mitchell Moss of NYU on a study which shows that maybe transportation in public is not as bad as we originally thought in terms of contracting diseases like flu and maybe even COVID. We'll also have John Authors on from Bloomberg Markets and Bloomberg Opinion to talk these markets. First, let's get a Bloomberg Business Flash from Greg Jarrett.
Stocks have fallen but are now fluctuating a bit in a surge in coronavirus cases, which has fueled concern over tougher restrictions while negotiations over further stimulus slow to a snail's pace in Congress. Let's take a look at the numbers now. The S&P's down 0.2%, down 6. The Dow is little change, down 9. The NASDAQ is down 0.3%, down 42. The 10-year is up 6/32. The yield 0.9%. West Texas Intermediate crude's down 0.3% at 45.60 a barrel. COMEX gold's up 0.4% at 18.7360 an ounce. The dollar yen 104.16. The euro's $1.2105 the pound, $1.3320. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Paul Sweeney and Bonnie Quinn on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, as we all think about how to best manage our day-to-day activities amid the pandemic, one of the areas that's really taken a hit has been mass transportation. People just don't feel comfortable getting on subways and buses and so on. But a new report from NYU suggests that that may not be as big an issue as people may be thinking. Professor Mitchell Moss, director of the Ruden Center for Transportation Policy and Management, also the Henry Hart Rice Professor of Urban Policy and Planning at NYU, joins us. Professor Moss, thanks so much for joining us here. When I saw this report, it really piqued my interest because as someone like most New Yorkers, we ride the subway multiple times every day, and the assumption was that was just a breeding ground for all types of viruses, including COVID. What did your research tell you?
So the study we have done shows that influenza deaths, which is not the same as coronavirus, over a 10-year period have no relationship to mass transit ridership. And we believe since the spread of the virus has some similarities, this is a very important study because it confirms what has been reached in other areas of science, which is that it's sustained social interaction, which is the area of highest risk for the spread of this coronavirus.
So when you say influenza deaths, what about influenza hospitalizations or just contracting influenza? Were you able to get data on that?
Well, we relied on death because there's one thing that's very hard to do is to hide a body. And the diagnosis, we didn't really go for the kind of number of diagnoses of influenza, which, as you know, can be quite common, especially among older people. But influenza death is a very specific category. I think the key part which we want to highlight here is that the subway in New York, especially, but also in Hong Kong and in Paris and in certain cases Seoul and Tokyo, has been manageable. In other words, people are wearing masks. In some places, they're cleaning the subway cars multiple times. In New York, the air is filtered more often, in a subway car than it is in most office buildings. So we believe, and it's very important here, that the subway, where most people don't talk to each other, they don't look at each other, they can't hear each other because the train wheels are so loud, they're focusing on their phones or their iPads, actually produces very atomistic behavior. People stick to themselves. And so the actual subway ride is not the source, we believe, of the virus compared to other settings. And how do we know this? Well, look in the state of New York. Buffalo has an infection rate 3 times higher than the city of New York. Buffalo is not a major subway city. They have a bus system. Los Angeles in Southern California, which is having a vast surge, as you know, of cases, is an automobile city. In fact, people cannot figure out how L.A. could have so many cases given how low density some of the living is and how outdoors it is. And so the virus spreads when people are together with each other for sustained periods of time, especially indoors. The subway tends to be a managed ride, tends to have very little interaction, and the air itself there, it's filtered so often that it tends to present less of a risk than, in many cases, I would say, going to the Oval Office. I mean, we have a chart in the media of the number of people who've been with the president who've contracted the virus. We think the subway car is safer than in the Oval Office.
Yeah, but I wouldn't have wanted to ride in a subway car with the president at that time either.
Well, I think that what we've seen is that the initial pandemic was so concentrated in New York that people said it must be due to mass transit.
Well,
and now we see, if you look at a map of the U.S., you know, there are states in the upper Midwest where they wouldn't know a subway car from a limousine because, in fact, you know, they're really driving trucks. And the fact is that South Dakota and North Dakota and some of those states have had serious outbreaks from a motorcycle rally. So what we would argue is that our research shows that mass transit by itself is not really tied to the spread of virus. Now, over time, we're going to learn more about the coronavirus.
But wait, Professor, can I just clarify? Are you basing that on the fact that the people who died from influenza across the country didn't increase in areas where there were no mass transit? Is that?
No, I think this is a great question. I appreciate it. So remember, this is a study of collective death. So it's no one individual case. But we have looked at where there were, you know, influenza deaths and where there were mass transit systems, and this is over 100 cities, that there's no relationship between mass transit use and the deaths from influenza. So we really can't talk about any one individual. We can say that the ridership of mass transit does not connect in any form to the death by influenza.
Right, because it's people's immune system and it's how they react and it's how influenza influences one person versus another person. Wouldn't that be the same for COVID?
Well, I think this is a great question for which, you know, our knowledge of COVID is 1 year old. You know, last spring everybody thought it was surfaces. Now we're finding out it's much more air. So I think, you know, and every human being, I think as you point out, is affected by the COVID very differently. If you ask any of the emergency room doctors, they'll be the first to tell you that patients experience the virus in different parts of their systems. Sometimes it's breathing, sometimes it's heart. You know, it affects people so differently that I'm not sure we can make a judgment as to, you know, how actually people are going to be affected by, you know, any one particular bout of the virus because their own composition, remember, their age, their underlying conditions affect how it affects them.
So, Professor, just in the next 30 seconds, have you discussed this with the city, and has the MTA had any response to this study?
Well, the MTA has taken a very aggressive approach to having masks being required, and the ridership shows 95% are wearing masks. I think the MTA is very familiar with the study because they have actually been very aggressive, not only in enforcing the mask requirement, but in sanitizing it. That's why the stations are closed at night and the cars are cleaned. And so they're doing what they can do. Now, they've had a lot of loss of death of some of the people who work in the transit union because they have been in vulnerable situations where they're interacting with people. But I think what's amazing is that the MTA has recognized this, which is why they've aggressively spent a lot of money, and they continue to do this, in cleaning stations and the cars. The mask requirement, though, has been the best example of their success. The amount of use of the mask is greater than that on the sidewalks of New York City.
Yeah, it's fascinating. We have to thank you, Professor. I hope you come back. I would love to continue to chat with you as this progresses. Professor Mitchell Moss, Director of the NYU Ruden Center for Transportation and Policy Management. Now, let's get down to Washington, D.C. and Nathan Hager.
Vonnie, as the first vaccines against coronavirus begin to roll out in the UK, staffers at the Food and Drug Administration have published their initial review of Pfizer and BioNTech's shot. It largely mirrors what the companies themselves have said, that it's 95% effective and shows no serious safety issues after 2 months of study. At the same time, the FDA staffers say it's still not clear whether the shot keeps COVID-19 from spreading. Meantime, the head of Operation Warp Speed is explaining why the Trump administration passed on the chance last summer to buy an extra 100 million doses doses of the Pfizer shot. Dr. Monsef Slaoui was on ABC News.
We selected 6 different vaccines to build a portfolio to manage the risk that some may work and some may not work, but also to ensure that as more than one would work, that we would accumulate vaccine doses from this portfolio of vaccines.
Dow Jones reports Pfizer and the U.S. government are in talks to secure additional doses. President-elect Joe Biden plans to name retired Army General Lloyd Austin as Defense Secretary. If confirmed, he'd be the first African-American in the post. He'd also need a waiver from Congress because military officers are required to wait 7 years after retirement before becoming head of the Pentagon. The cybersecurity official who was fired by President Trump after he called the 2020 election the most secure in American history is suing. The New York Times reports Christopher Krebs is accusing Trump campaign lawyer Joe DeGeneva of defamation and inflicting emotional distress for saying on Newsmax that Krebs needs to be drawn and quartered after he gave an interview on CBS's 60 Minutes. Krebs is asking for monetary damages and for that video to be removed from Newsmax archives. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
What's the truth? Cozy up for the holidays with 60% off everything at Banana Republic Factory, including soft sweaters, comfy pajamas, must-have gifts, and more from $9.99. Find your nearest store now.
I think JCF has one of the best funds out there. It's very reasonable in its pricing. It's very flexible in its investments. And I give them an A+ for client service.
A fund may be opened with a $5,000 contribution of cash or appreciated securities and can be used as an alternative to a private foundation. At any time, you may suggest which charities you would like to support and in what amounts. Choose from the menu of high-rated investment options, and your charitable fund can earn tax-free income.
It's a very client-centric organization. They have a very user-friendly website, and I find they make my life easier.
Let the Jewish Communal Fund be your personal connection to charitable giving. Open a JCF fund now to lock in a 2020 tax deduction. Call 212-752-8277, 212-752-8277, or visit jcfny.org. For the Jewish Communal Fund, past President Noel Spiegel.
People often ask me why it's important to use JCF for their charitable giving. I tell them that JCF has a profound impact on our community. Thanks to the revenue generated from our funds, JCF makes an annual $2 million grant to UJA Federation of New York and makes grants from our endowment, the Special Gifts Fund. This year, we proudly granted more than $800,000 to support a kosher food pantry at Mid-Island YJCC, Jewish daycare at the Ed Alliance, a renovation at Camp Oakhurst, and an intergenerational Holocaust program at Ramaz. I'd like you to hear about our impact from a past Special Gifts Fund recipient.
Plaza Jewish Community Chapel is most grateful to JCF for supplying seed money to start the organization. Almost 10,000 families have relied on Plaza to provide an affordable yet dignified Jewish funeral.
Let JCF maximize your impact. Visit jcfny.org or call 212-752-8277.
The Happy Honda Days sales event is here, and thousands of new Hondas are marked with clearance prices and payments. Well-qualified buyers can save thousands with financing as low as 0.9% on select 2020 Hondas. Every Honda model is clearance priced. Accords, Civics, HRVs, CRVs, Passports, Pilots, and more. Don't miss the Happy Honda Days sales event with thousands of new Hondas in stock with financing as low as 0.9%. Search your local Honda dealer today. See dealer for financing details. Offer ends 1/4/21.
This holiday season, shoot for the stars with sparkling gifts from Pandora Jewelry. When you shop December 7th through 14th, a sterling silver Moon and Stars open bangle is yours free with any purchase of $125 or more. Shop Pandora Jewelry today. Free bangle with purchase while supplies last at participating retailers. No substitutions. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Visit the Pandora store at Southland Mall, located off Florida's Turnpike on Southwest 205th Street and US 1. Pandora, Southland Mall.
What can give you a competitive edge in today's red-hot housing market? Rocket can. That's because Rocket Mortgage can give you a verified approval. It could help your offer stand out. Rocket Technology provides a rock-solid verification of your income, assets, and credit, giving sellers greater confidence in you. Go to rocketmortgage.com or call us today at 8338-ROCKET.
A verified approval is based on an underwriter's analysis of your individual financial information, appraisal, and title report. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender license in all 50 states and MLSConsumerAccess.org number 3030.
Let's say you just bought a house.
Bad news is, you're one step closer to becoming your parents. You'll proudly mow the lawn. Ask if anybody noticed you mowed the lawn. Tell people to stay off the lawn. Compare it to your neighbor's lawn. And complain about having to mow the lawn again. Good news is, it's easy to bundle home and auto through Progressive and save on your car insurance, which, of course, will go right into the lawn. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and other insurers. Discount not available in all states or situations.
Cozy up for the holidays with 60% off everything at Banana Republic Factory, including soft sweaters, comfy pajamas, must-have gifts, and more from $9.99. Find your nearest store now, only at Banana Republic Factory. Get 50 through 70% off almost everything at Gap Factory and gapfactory.com. Plus, shop new doorbusters for the family, including outerwear, jeans, and our Gap logo crew neck sweatshirt. Find it all at Gap Factory or gapfactory.com through December 14th.
Professional painters know waiting between coats for trim, doors, and cabinets to dry is time out of your day and money out of your pocket. Bare Premium Cabinet and Trim Enamel from the Home Depot lets you finish faster. With excellent flow and leveling, it dries to the touch in 1 hour, and less dry time means less downtime. Bare Premium Cabinet and Trim Enamel, just $39.98 a gallon, and that's before the Pro Extra discount, only at the Home Depot. How doers get more done. Available in-store and online.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
The S&P is in the red for a second day, led by utility companies and retailers. Energy shares are outperforming. Tesla slumped as the car maker announces plans to raise as much as $5 billion, tapping capital markets for a third time this year. Let's take a look at these numbers. S&P's down 0.1%, down 3. The Dow's up 0.1%, up 25. And the Nasdaq's down 0.2%, down 24. The 10-year is currently up 5/30 seconds with a yield of 0.9%. West Texas Intermediate crude is down 0.5% at $45.52 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.25% at $18.70 an ounce. The dollar yen 104.17. The euro $1.2106. The pound $1.3318. Apple launched its first over-ear headphones, entering a competitive market dominated by rivals like Bose and Sony, and expanding its push into accessories. The pricey $550 headphones include wireless pairing and noise cancellation. Apple is down 0.3%. Steak and lobster for a week or new headphones? That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Paul Sweeney and Bonnie Quinn on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, Greg Jarrett certainly buys himself some expensive steak and lobster. That's all I can say. Let's turn to somebody else who has great taste, and that is John Authers. Great taste because he works here. He works for Bloomberg News and Bloomberg Opinion, and he has written a most recent column entitled Ignore the Noise. This is a classic recovery. John, you absolutely need to defend this. How on earth is this a classic recovery?
Okay. Take a look at what we're looking at is the industrial cycle, about the economic cycle. What I'm suggesting is if you try to blank out, and it's difficult going on, impossible, but if you try to blank out your knowledge of what's going on in politics and about the pandemic, what you see is a global economy that had sustained a very severe hit earlier in the year, and where recovery is already rudely progressing very fast, particularly in the most cyclical part of the global economy, which is China and North Asia. So if you look at the performance of copper, 7-year high, iron ore on the Qingdao contract, which the Chinese have, which is up 50% for the year. If you look at the performance of Korea and Taiwan, arch exporters, countries that are exposed to the global economic cycle, they are now leading the planet in terms of stock market returns for the years. They're comfortably ahead of the States. They're comfortably ahead now of China. So you do see all the classic signs from the markets of the beginnings of a cyclical recovery in the economy, and obviously quite advanced process of a concomitant cyclical recovery in markets to reflect it.
So, John, as you are suggesting there, obviously we are seeing some movements in the cyclical part of the economy, some manufacturing data as well. As I think about the U.S. in particular, I think about the labor market and the challenges in the labor market. How does that factor into kind of your thinking about how the global economy will recover?
I think we're talking about the economy or markets. If we look at the economy, I think I've made this argument many times over the years. So it is a little bit like Lucy and Charlie Brown and the football or whatever. But I think the moment when the labor market actually begins to show some genuine signs of recovery in a way that actually gets in the way of the stock market could now be at hand. Or I guess the cliched way to look at it is Main Street finally gets one over on Wall Street. The reason for that is, as I've covered in the piece, there's vast sums of money have been doled out this year, and unlike after Lehman, they've actually gone into people's pockets. There's a lot of money saved up at present by those who have them, by those who have money at all. And that money has to go somewhere, and the odds are that it's going to be spent on stuff. It's going to buy stuff rather than recycle its way yet again back into the stock market. So I think the chances are reasonably high that you do get a further recovery next year. Now, obviously the vaccine and the virus are hugely important to that. If we didn't, I'm just in terms of the thought exercise of trying to exclude that, what seems most likely at present, what the market is positioned for and what the economy is directing us towards is a steady recovery in the labor market, which probably comes at the expense of the stock market, which is obviously borrowed from future returns. The economy has done terribly this year and the stock market has done well. Plainly, that's because it's borrowed money from the future.
So then do we need to start worrying about inflation and looking for inflation hedges?
Yes.
Okay, where would we find those?
It's difficult to find them, but and again, this is another Charlie Brown and the football question. But if you have money supply growing at the kind of rate that we've seen recently, and critically, it actually gets spent. It doesn't spend it. It doesn't stay in the asset markets, creating asset price inflation rather than inflation in the general level of prices in the economy, then it does seem reasonable to expect inflation in due course. Economic logic takes a long time to work itself out, but it does happen eventually. In terms of what you would look at for inflation hedges, my best guess is that we might be at the beginning. I find the recovery in metals this year very interesting. I think we might be at the beginning of another commodity super cycle. The buzzword for it is the Kondratiev wave, these big waves in commodities that take decades to work out. Generally speaking, when commodities are going upwards for a while, stocks go sideways for a while. It may be a time for commodities again.
Hey, John, we can't let you go, particularly right at this point in time, without getting your thoughts on Brexit as Prime Minister Johnson is in Brussels. How do you think this is going to play out over the next couple of days?
Well, obviously there's the huge developments today that the British government are climbing down over the deal that was made last year, the agreement they signed last year over the Irish border, which certainly renders the talks much less toxic, makes the sense that Johnson has been acting in grotesquely bad faith that much less. He can say that he's made a big concession, which may help ease the process towards a deal on trade. That said, the deal on trade is still very difficult. I don't want to be too cynical, but saying you're going to break the law and break your own word within a year of making it, and then trying to make it a big deal out of conceding that you won't, after all, break the law and break your own promise, is a little bit of a cheap negotiating tactic.
I've been wondering about this and I'm berating myself for being so cynical, but it's there, isn't it, John?
You do not need to be Irish, Bonnie, to feel cynical about this particular rather sleazy British move. I mean, you're just a bit more embarrassed about it if you happen to be British. But yes, I share your reading of this particular approach, yeah.
Well, John, thank you very, very much for joining. That was a lot of fun, and we will see some development on the Brexit story, no doubt, over the next few days, one way or another. John Author is there of Bloomberg Opinion. Do follow him on Twitter as well. Some very mordant tweets.
You need more.
DoorDash presents Art for Foodies, available at artforfoodies2020.com. From Wednesday, December 2nd through Sunday, December 6th, DoorDash is bringing art to your door to support Miami restaurants and artists. Order empanadas, ceviche, patacones, arepas, tacos, yuca frita, or ropa vieja using the DoorDash app, and the person with the most orders will be the owner of a unique Latino piece of art. Learn more at artforfoodies2020.com.
Jody Schwartz, noted tax attorney, tells us why she recommends Jewish Communal Fund.
I recommend the JCF to my clients, to my colleagues, to really anyone who asks a question about charitable giving because it's convenient. It allows you the maximum tax deductions permitted by law, and it just makes your life easier, organized, and simple. Another aspect for clients and for other colleagues who don't want their identities to be known or don't want to talk about the property that they're giving away to charity, I found JCF's confidentiality, its aggregate reporting to be very attractive to people.
JCF can help you and your clients organize your charitable giving with a donor-advised fund. A fund can be established with a tax-deductible contribution of $5,000 or more. Contributions to JCF qualify for the highest tax deduction allowed by law. Visit jcfny.org or call 212-752-8277.
The Happy Honda Day sales event is here, and thousands of new Hondas are marked with clearance prices and payments. Well-qualified buyers can save thousands with financing as low as 0.9% on select 2020 Hondas. Every Honda model is clearance priced. Accords, Civics, HRVs, CRVs, Passports, Pilots, and more. Don't miss the Happy Honda Day sales event with thousands of new Hondas in stock with financing as low as 0.9%. Search your local Honda dealer today. See dealer for financing details. Offer ends 1/4/21.
This holiday season, shoot for the stars with sparkling gifts from Pandora Jewelry. When you shop December 7th through 14th, a sterling silver Moon and Stars open bangle is yours free with any purchase of $125 or more. Shop Pandora Jewelry today. Free bangle with purchase while supplies last at participating retailers. No substitutions. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Visit the Pandora store at Southland Mall, located off Florida's Turnpike on Southwest 205th Street and US 1. Pandora, Southland Mall.
Capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and at Bloomberg Quick Take. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Bonnie Quinn and Paul Sweeney.
The Fed action, essentially unlimited quantitative easing.
Companies taking aim at coronavirus vaccines and other treatments.
This could be a lower for longer hit.
Market sell-off glowing global once again.
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
It's possible that this is going to be a scarring recession.
The Fed is really showing that they're doing whatever it takes.
A lot of people don't expect that the economy will reopen in full.
This is really hitting industrial America, and it's a major crisis.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Bonnie Quinn and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
And we have some breaking vaccine news. The Astra-Oxford vaccine efficacy has been confirmed now in peer-reviewed data. Apparently, the Astra-Oxford vaccine prevents the worst COVID symptoms in this particular study. It's effective, but it does leave questions in older ages. This is all according to a peer-review study. 10 hospitalisation cases seen in the trial all occurred among those given a placebo. Let's bring in somebody who knows a little bit more about the background background to this particular vaccine and has been looking at the results and is looking at these headlines as they come out now. Michelle Cortez, Health, Science and Medical Technology reporter for Bloomberg. So, Michelle, this is good, but relatively speaking, is it as good as the other vaccine news we've been hearing?
You know, Vonnie, it's a great question, and it actually is not appearing to be as effective as the Pfizer and Moderna trials. That being said, there was a little bit of a hiccup with this trial. In fact, there were a couple, which is really to be expected given the pace of development here. They originally were only going to be using one dose of the vaccine. Then they realized it would be more effective if they did two, so they added that second dose in later. And of course, there was an issue where some of the patients or some of the volunteers in the trial got actually half of the dose in that first injection than they were expected to get. And that unexpectedly turned out to be much more effective, a 90% vaccination efficacy rate with that smaller first dose, with only a 63% efficacy rate in the people who got both full doses. So that's unexpected. There's going to have to be more research here.
So, Michelle, have we got any more clarity on that, that half dose issue that we learned about a couple of weeks ago that seemed to surprise a lot of people in the community?
Right. It is inexplicable. I mean, we do know that the people who got that half dose were actually a younger group of patients. And so they are less likely to get severe disease. They're less likely to become infected. So there could be some explanation happening there. But indeed, we don't exactly know what's going on here. The company has said that they do plan to do another trial to look at this specific effect. That should not take as long to do because you're just looking at how the body responds to the vaccine. So we should be able to get through that pretty quickly. But even when you're looking at the higher efficacy rates, it's not quite reaching the levels that we're seeing with Pfizer and Moderna.
It does appear that less is more in this case, but that may not be the full story. What does Astra do next? I mean, is this good enough data to release the vaccine into the wild as Pfizer has already done, or do they have to do more?
Well, they have said that they're going to be doing more as well. And of course, the fact is that we're not going to have enough vaccine to protect the entire world for some time to come. So when you're looking at a 90% efficacy rate with this lower first dose, I mean, that is still extraordinary. It is absolutely unbelievable that they were able to get this effect. This trial was done in some very high-risk areas. A lot of these patients were in Brazil, which is having a massive outbreak. And the idea that you can be getting this vaccine to people across the world who would otherwise have no protection against the virus is really breathtaking. You can't overestimate how important it is. It is really important to be getting all of these vaccines.
Yeah. So, Michelle, it seems like, again, we started this process when we started talking about vaccines, and we were kind of told that, if you get a 50 or 60% efficacy rate, that's good. And obviously now we're getting much, much higher rates. So it seems to me that while the AstraZeneca perhaps is not on par with some of its competitors or peers, it's still very good. Is that the expectation, that this is still a good number? It is a good, it's good science, it's a good vaccine, and that it will be effective in the marketplace?
Absolutely. It's an astonishing vaccine. We're even seeing, some data coming out of this trial that we haven't seen as much with the other trials. For example, we know that the Astra vaccine is preventing asymptomatic cases. So for people who didn't show any signs or symptoms of the disease but might still be infected, this vaccine is actually protecting against that. That's very important to know, that there's not some latent level of vaccine circulating among the people who got this vaccine. And you have to remember, the numbers are astonishing. In this low dose group of people, there were 7 cases out of over 1,000 people who were treated with the vaccine. I mean, that's just amazing to think that you can get that kind of efficacy, even if it's not, in comparison, there was 1 in the Pfizer trial. But still, I mean, we're talking about 7 people, 1 people. It's a handful of people. It's remarkable no matter which way you look at it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Also, the fact that you can prevent it, in people who might otherwise be asymptomatic, that's really important, because it's the people who don't have it that you don't know have it that are dangerous. I mean, if somebody is coughing in front of you, you're obviously not going to, go near them. But if there's somebody looking completely healthy who may have the virus, you wouldn't know that necessarily. So how is this different to the mRNA platform? How are Oxford and Astra approaching this differently to, say, Pfizer and the others?
Right. Well, they are different technologies. The mRNA vaccines are brand new. There are no vaccines like this out there in the world. This will be the first vaccine using this technology ever developed. It is, again, I keep saying remarkable, but it's just like, how do you do that? It's a vaccine that we've never even tried before. And they're like, well, let's try it. And not only let's try it, but in less than 10 months, we're going to start from zero and actually get it into people's arms. The way that vaccine works is it actually delivers a little bit of the genetic sequence. So your cells are producing a bit of the spike protein, showing your immune system what they should be going after. The Astra vaccine is a little bit different. It actually delivers the virus itself to an inactivated version of it into the cells themselves. And so then they are producing that protein. And so they know what to go after. It's a different approach. Same idea in terms of exposing the immune system to the virus so that it'll know what to look at. The Astra vaccine will be easier to deliver. It doesn't require this super cold chain delivery system that the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines do need. So there are different approaches here. Each one has different benefits and risks. If you are a country that is very hot, that doesn't have great consistent electricity, you're probably not going to want the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine anyway. You might not have the technology to deliver that. So having the Astra version would be helpful for these areas.
And Michelle, what do we know about the timing of getting approval for this vaccine across the world? We're seeing it almost daily, including today with the FDA and the Pfizer news. What do we know about the Astra timeline?
Well, it's interesting because Astra was on hold longer in the U.S. than it was in other places, specifically in Europe. The FDA has been very cautious when it comes to reviewing all of these vaccines, making sure that they're dotting every I and crossing every T. So when it looks like for the U.S., Astra is going to be a while delayed here. It's probably going to take a couple of months at least to get this additional trial underway and to figure out exactly where we're going. Certainly there are other countries where we will most likely see Astra going much more quickly and getting their vaccine onto the market in other areas more quickly. That could happen within the next month or two.
Michelle, this idea that was out that the Trump administration didn't put in a big enough order with Pfizer, how is that being received?
Well, the Trump administration is saying that they have ordered enough vaccine to cover the entire U.S. population. Anybody who's interested in getting vaccinated should be able to have access to that by the end of the summer. What their approach was is they were ordering 100 million doses from each of the different vaccine companies so that they would be broadening out their exposure level. So if one doesn't work, then they haven't already purchased an awful lot of that and not enough of something else. So they did it broadly, ordering 600 million doses across various vaccines. Of course, now we know that there's one or two that are highly effective. You want to get all of that as much as you possibly can. And as you point out, they have already sold that vaccine to other places. So it's going to be yet until the summer before they can start delivering more of those doses to the U.S. government. We'll have to see if we're going to need those doses or not. At this point, we're still getting results from the other vaccine manufacturers, and there could be additional benefits. Maybe you only need one shot from some of these vaccines. The side effects, they're very mild, but they do occur, and they occur in more than half of people in some cases. So there are other vaccines that are being developed still that might have less of those sort of issues, or maybe they're more effective in older people. So there's still details to be teased out here. It does look like, a little bit of a setback that the U.S. isn't going to get as much of this first Pfizer vaccine as they want, but ultimately it's going to be hard to get it into everybody, and so we have to see how it plays out.
Michelle, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your reporting there. Michelle Cortez, health, science, and medical technology reporter for Bloomberg News. Now I want to bring in Sam Fazeli. Sam's one of the top pharmaceutical and biotech analysts in the city of London. He also manages Bloomberg Intelligence for us across the European region. Sam, I know you've been following these vaccine news very, very closely for months. We know you've studied this in your prior life. Give us a sense of how you frame this AstraZeneca news that we just received this morning.
Yeah, hi, Paul. I just wish I could find that paper that they published, apparently, about 8 minutes ago. I can't, so I'm running around with all the people I know, clients and all.
I think we might have lost Sam.
We may have, but if he can hear us, I'm curious to know as to where in that paper you would first go, Sam. What is the data that you're particularly looking for? No, it does appear that we have lost him. We're going to try and get him back, though, because that is interesting. We do seem to have...
Yeah, it's just, one of the issues, that was raised just in some of the early reporting, Vonnie, is some of the older populations for the AstraZeneca news. So that's going to be an area, I think they were saying 55 and older, they're going to need some more testing about the efficacy and maybe even some of the side effects of the AstraZeneca vaccine. But it appears to be, moving forward, but perhaps a little bit slower than maybe the Pfizer and the Moderna.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, this vaccine is showing that it prevents severe disease, but more data is needed on older people, which they define as over 55s, which is not that really old at all, but sort of middle-aged and older people, let's say. And this has all been published in the Lancet Medical Journal, so extraordinarily, documented and reputable. I think we may have Sam back, in which case we will go to him and ask him, where exactly in that study he would look, because there's obviously information that he's looking for, and us normal folk wouldn't perhaps be able to decide what it means, but Sam would. So Sam, if you can hear us, what do you want to actually see in the study data?
Yeah, hi. Sorry about that. I want to see the split between age groups. I think we talked about this before. I want to see if the vaccine works better in younger people than older people, or does it work as well in older people? Remember, just a few weeks ago, they published a paper saying, look, we induced the same immune response in the two different populations. So why would one group work less than another? That's the kind of thing I need to see and see if there's any data in there that I would then get hopeful that regulators can say, okay, we'll approve that.
So, Sam, give us your sense about kind of where you think the AstraZeneca vaccine might fit in terms of where it might be most useful. Some people are suggesting that since it doesn't require the extreme refrigeration, that maybe in some of the developing markets it might really be more effective. Is that a view you share?
Well, to be honest with you, Paul, I think the U.S. could use it too. I mean, you've heard, and I heard a little bit of what Michelle was saying, that 100 million doses of Pfizer vaccine by the middle of the year, 100 million doses of the Moderna vaccines by the middle of the year next year. That doesn't get you to the full vaccination cover that they've been talking about. Well, how are you going to do that? We only have one other vaccine, and that's AstraZeneca, where they do have access to hundreds of millions of doses in the U.S. too, that could solve that problem. So long as the data is clear. But of course, that refrigeration aspect is very helpful in anywhere around the world if you don't have to move around with boxes of minus 60 degrees.
Yeah, and, dry ice apparently is in a bit of short supply, and that's one of the things that helps you move it around in those temperatures. What about carrying in airplanes? How many doses can you fit in if you don't need to refrigerate,
Oof, I don't know. If you don't. I don't think that makes much difference. To be honest, Vonnie, you've caught me off the hop here.
Wow, I've caught Sam Fazeli off guard. That is unreal.
I never thought about how big the inside of an airplane is. I mean, these massive military planes can carry tanks and things, so I can't imagine it would be a major issue, given that the boxes have a very long shelf life for Pfizer-BioNTech. So I don't think it's that major part of the taking hundreds of thousands of doses and millions of doses from one place to another. Remember, they've just trucked them from Belgium into the UK for Pfizer vaccine, right? So that I don't think is necessarily an issue. What I think is the problem is that last mile kind of thing that we're all used to talking about when it comes to the Amazons of this world, getting it into places where it's difficult to keep things at a very low temperature, in which case the fridge is much better.
Yeah.
Hey, Sam, give us a sense. We're familiar with the Pfizer, the AstraZeneca, the Moderna. What else is out there on the vaccine front that you're paying attention to?
I'm really looking forward to seeing the data for Novavax, Paul.
Okay.
And obviously this paper by AstraZeneca too, because I heard that there was a problem with a typo in the. They kind of ran ahead of themselves a little bit. I've just received the link. So Novavax is the one I'm really interested in seeing, because that's one that has very different technology that's being used in it. And then, of course, Johnson & Johnson. The first readout will come from a trial that's only one dose. And it's similar to AstraZeneca's, but it's different in the way that they designed the so-called spike protein. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that data looks and compares.
Sam, thank you so much for all of your intelligence. Literally, Sam Fazeli there speaking to us from Bloomberg Intelligence, senior pharmaceuticals analyst, and he's responsible for a lot more as well, but that is for another day. We'll continue to talk to Sam about the vaccine process as we move through the end of the year. Now, let's get some market reaction and some up-to-date market news from Greg Jarrett.
Yeah, we have had a bit of a shift, Vonnie, while everybody there was talking, as markets start to fluctuate with this news. The S&P is still a little changed, but it's up 1. The Dow's up 0.2%, up 53, and the Nasdaq is down 0.2%, down 22. The 10-year is up 4/32 with a yield of 0.9%. West Texas Intermediate crude's down 0.1% at 45.70 a barrel, while COMEX gold's up 0.3% at 1871.50 an ounce. The dollar yen 104.14, the euro's $1.2111, and the British pound $1.33.51. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
And Greg Jarrett, thank you for that. All right, now it's time for something completely different, as they say. Let's move to Tesla. Paul, you mentioned it earlier on, speaking with Dave Wilson. It's up at 626.95 now. And, you know, it just continues to move on up. It's going to sell shares, sees proceeds of up to $5 billion. There just doesn't seem to be any stopping the investors in this company. Let's bring in Dan Ives of Wedbush, analyst on Tesla. So, Dan, talk to us about this share price. Is it warranted? Should we throw another $5 billion at this company?
Look, it's a great question. I mean, our bull case is $1,000. And we continue to view this right now as just a transformational market in terms of EV demand. And if you look at the EV market, right now it's Tesla's world and everyone else is paying rent. And I think that's what investors are looking at. They're looking at what this market's going to be in the next 3 to 4 years. You know, obviously stock could continue to be volatile. But in terms of playing the EV space, when you look out, you know, I think that right now is why this stock continues to move higher. You know, just given the supply demand on pure EV plays.
So, Dan, give us a sense here of use of proceeds here. Is this simply let's shore up the balance sheet, raise capital when we can, not necessarily when we need it?
Well, that's exactly it, Paul. I mean, this is $12 billion and counting in terms of what they've raised. Go back a year ago, that was the biggest bear thesis in terms of shoring up the balance sheet. They were not profitable. Now you got profitability. They're hitting when the iron's hot in terms of raising capital. And it really throws that bear thesis out the window. And that's really the key when you go forward in terms of the Tesla story. Now you don't have any balance sheet issues.
Until he spends it, I mean, he seems to have an unlimited ability to spend the money that he gets in. So for how long will there be no balance sheet issues? Oh, I think maybe Dan has dropped his line.
Phone line issues on this Tuesday.
Even with even with capital deployments in Berlin as well as in Austin, I mean, this really shores them up for the next few years in terms of those capital issues. And now investors view it as what's the growth opportunity going forward. And right now, if you look at EV, especially in China, you know, Tesla's really seen an inflection of demand and profitable. That speaks to the S&P 500 inclusion, which is different from a year ago.
Hey, Dan, give us a sense here. Let's take a step back here. It just feels like we're starting to hear more and more out of the traditional automakers in terms of maybe some product introductions, some EV products in particular. How do you think the traditional auto manufacturers over the next 5 years are going to move on EVs, and how do you think that, to what extent is that a risk to Tesla?
Well, I think if you look at GM spending $20 billion in the next 5 years on EV, and I think it speaks to what's happening is this is really going to be, today it's 3% of overall automotive sales worldwide. I think that goes to 10% by 2025. I think traditional automakers are viewing this. You're going to have tax incentives. Of course, you have it in Europe. I think with the Biden administration doubling down on tax incentives in the U.S., and ultimately from a multiple perspective, remember, Tesla doesn't get treated as an automotive company. It's a disruptive technology name. And I think automotives and the boards, they also recognize that. More and more success on EV, you could start to see names like GM, Ford get re-rated on that success.
Couple of questions, Dan, if you don't mind. One is you've been underperformed on Nikola, so you obviously feel like that's a whole different type of story, and the similarities that we see between the Nikola story and the Tesla story, really maybe we shouldn't be seeing them. So I want to ask you about that. I also want to ask you if Elon Musk is spread too thin and why people have stopped complaining about that. They used to complain about that when it came to Jack Dorsey all the time.
Yeah, and in terms of Nikola, I mean, our cautious stance has been just some of the company-specific issues going on, especially with GM and others. I do think that those start to clear over the next 3 to 6 months, but that's why we've been more cautious on Nikola, even though they still have a great prototype and opportunity. I think, look, it's not you can't paint every, company with the same brush. And I think in terms of EV, going to the Musk question, I mean, he's kind of had that red cape. He's been able to do Superman-like things, not just with Tesla, but of course with SpaceX. And I think that's not as much of a concern for investors, just given what you've seen, more maturity, more profitability. They've scaled across the globe, and Musk continues to kind of navigate that, as well as a strong bench that they've started to develop over at Fremont.
So, it's interesting, Dan, as we think about the Tesla story, it's always just what's the next catalyst? What's the next catalyst? Is it, when you take a look at the Tesla story, is it new products? Is it manufacturing numbers? What are investors really focusing on in terms of metrics these days?
Yeah, metrics right now, laser focused on China. I think China could be worth $100 per share. That's the focus. Looking at what we see, we've already seen strength in terms of this quarter going into next year. Can they get to 250,000 units potentially in China from 150 first year out? That's going to be the key. And then it's the drum roll to the Cybertruck. I mean, that's going to be the next, really potential game changer model. And you're seeing that pickup truck market. It's not just Tesla. It's Ford, GM, obviously Rivian. That's a whole nother opportunity in terms of EV, and it speaks to what you're seeing in these stocks, not just in the U.S., but even in China with NIO and others, just, really in the early days of this market breaking out.
What's your favorite company or your most preferred company, I suppose, in your coverage universe? You cover a lot of companies that are relevant to the current period, including DocuSign and companies like that.
Yeah, well, DocuSign's been our favorite work-from-home name, along with Zscaler. I think you got to play cloud and cybersecurity as core themes. And then our favorite large cap continues to be Apple. I think going into a super cycle, demand looks very strong going into next year. And that continues to be our favorite large cap name, along with Microsoft, to play the cloud. And those are the keys: cloud, cybersecurity, and these large tech names. We still think tech stocks a year from now are 30% higher.
Dan, Apple's had a bunch of news out today, some new products, some headphones, some chips. What's the takeaway from what you've heard from Apple over the last 24 hours?
Yeah, it's just further solidifying not just the super cycle in terms of iPhone, but the broader product cycle that's happened across Macs, across AirPods. I mean, we think AirPods this year, 90 million units sold. That's up from 65 million a year ago. That's going to be 5% of sales. So what you're starting to see, not just on services, which is a big part of the re-rating, but Apple right now is in the biggest product cycle, not just in iPhone, but if you look across the board, really in its history. And I think that speaks to why this stock has a lot more fuel in the engine. Right now we see 150 price target, and I think potentially bull case could start to get you toward 200.
Dan, thanks as always. We like to just kind of go across the board tech with you, and you're always able to give us some great insights. Dan Ives, Managing Director, Equity Research, Wedbush Securities, giving his thoughts on Tesla, Apple, and some of the stay-at-home stocks. Dan Ives is a big bull on technology. He's been absolutely on top of these names, and he's been absolutely right, riding this technology bull market that we've seen really since the end of the financial crisis and really come into play really just over the last 12 months as well. So we appreciate Dan's thoughts there. We'll have more coming up. This is Bloomberg.
This is What can give you a competitive edge in today's red-hot housing market? Rocket can. That's because Rocket Mortgage can give you a verified approval. It could help your offer stand out. Rocket Technology provides a rock-solid verification of your income, assets, and credit, giving sellers greater confidence in you. Go to rocketmortgage.com or call us today at 8338-ROCKET.
A verified approval is based on an underwriter's analysis of your individual financial information, appraisal, and title report. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender license in all 50 states and MLSconsumeraccess.org number 3030.
The Happy Honda Day sales event is here, and thousands of new Hondas are marked with clearance prices and payments. Well-qualified buyers can save thousands with financing as low as 0.9% on select 2020 Hondas. Every Honda model is clearance priced. Accords, Civics, HRVs, CRVs, Passports, Pilots, and more. Don't miss the Happy Honda Day sales event with thousands of new Hondas in stock with financing as low as 0.9%. Search your local Honda dealer today. See dealer for financing details. Offer ends 1/4/21.
This holiday season, shoot for the stars with sparkling gifts from Pandora Jewelry. When you shop December 7th through 14th, a sterling silver Moon and Stars open bangle is yours free with any purchase of $125 or more. Shop Pandora Jewelry today. Free bangle with purchase while supplies last at participating retailers. No substitutions. Restrictions apply. See store for details.
Visit the Pandora store at Southland Mall, located off Florida's Turnpike on Southwest 205th Street and US 1. Pandora, Southland Mall.
Reopening.
The reopening rotation has taken place.
How will it happen?
Healthcare is obviously very much in focus.
What's next?
Surely it's better to have an extension.
What if?
This is going to be industry-wide.
At least there's one question you can have answered. Where to keep up?
We have the latest world and national news
right here.
This departed from a policy he had long had.
This is about people that you care about.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
The world's financial decision makers connect on the Bloomberg Terminal, sharing ideas, negotiating trades, and forming an influential network that helps power global markets. Isn't it time you join them? Bloomberg.com/professional.
Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks are little changed as traders are waiting on developments with stimulus negotiations in Washington. Meantime, a vaccine developed by the University of Oxford and AstraZeneca provided protection against severe COVID-19 in a peer-reviewed study. However, more analysis will be needed to see how well it works in older people. The Brazilian airline Gol will become the first carrier to resume regular flights with Boeing 737 MAX. Last month, safety officials lifted the grounding of the MAX. Gol begins passenger service on the jet tomorrow. The plane makes its return to the U.S. at the end of the month when American Airlines relaunches service. And Ford says a delay in the launch of its new Bronco was caused by a single part supplier that couldn't bring engineers with critical equipment to the U.S. from Europe on schedule because of the pandemic. While Ford would not identify the supplier, it's believed to be the company providing a removable roof for the vehicle. Courtney Donahoe, Bloomberg Radio.
First, I hold my hands out like they're on a steering wheel. Then I look over my shoulder. 1, okay, cool guy. 2, 3 times. Next, I put it in reverse. Meep, meep, meep. Then I take it up and down, up and down. And that, kiddos, is called the forklift.
Dance like a dad. It's a great way to make a moment with your kids.
Now that's dancing. Sure beats flossing.
Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
How long? How much? How many? Financial, policy, and medical experts are working on answers 24/7.
What about public debt?
We are listening to those experts 24/7.
Is the Fed effectively widening this wealth gap with its programs?
Because you want answers too.
What's the most important, the trillions in stimulus, the economy's reopening, or the infections curve bending?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. economics.
All this doom and gloom is out there.
Finance.
Do you see this as a technical correction?
Investment.
What are you looking at to give you some sort of compass through this period?
The Bloomberg Surveillance Podcast.
Lots and lots of talk about what the Fed should and shouldn't do.
Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrell, Lisa Abramowitz, and the names that shape the world's markets.
I'm going to speak with Professor Schiller of Yale University.
Bloomberg Surveillance. Listen today at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, or